This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam. And I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people that have so much to gain and have such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above board to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the Grotto leader?
Don't remember his name.
You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
now these people are in very high positions, Jack.
Yes.
Welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 234. I'm your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khalid.
And today, after a brief absence, I think it's been about 4 or 5 months since we've done one of these.
Yeah, which isn't great for our rate of getting through them.
No,
we'll
not.
Be plugging back into March 9th, 2022.
We made it about 4 months, I think, from the end of 2022 into 2023 in our last year Q&As in 2024. But now we're recording this in the dawn of 2025. This is, I guess, our second episode we recorded this new year, but we're going to be tackling some questions from the old Grotto of Truth Discord Q&A list. We've not forgotten about it. I think today we have some really good questions lined up. A couple we might have to punt on because they're such good topics that, honestly, I think they might deserve their own deep dives down the road. We've always said that. Sometimes we have to punt, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think maybe in the spirit of getting through these a little bit faster, we'll see how that goes. We have 10 on the list for today, so maybe we'll get through all 10. But I mean, our Q&A episodes, maybe we'll get into it in the course of our answering of the questions, but sometimes we use this as an opportunity to reflect upon where we are at in the current timeline. So now, we are recording this on January 16th, 4 days before the return of the Orange Man to the White House. And it's been a pretty crazy interregnum period. I mean, it would take a while to list all the crazy things that have happened, even in the last couple weeks. We're speaking on the back end of the apocalyptic LA fires that got a little close for comfort to me last week, but
you
thankfully
had to evacuate. Well, you kind of had to cautiously evacuate, right?
I reached the.
It wasn't critical, but it was.
It was. I was in red flag territory, but I live not probably about 8 miles as the crow flies from the Eaton fire in Altadena, which is absolutely ravaged, and it was not because the winds were insane on, I think that was Tuesday night. There were palm trees, not full trees, but branches just flying in the air, hitting my car as I was driving down the street. It was hurricane force, and it was the worst possible conditions for the fire. So there was fear that it could jump, and because all the winds were blowing in my direction, so I had to get my go bags together.
Yeah, and, your bug out bag. You had to.
Had to evac to my GFs, which was actually not that far away. So we might have to evac again. But the idea being that I could take my dog with me and some of my
your dog.
Essential gear, all the SJ hard drives, etc. And be ready to run
all your
run through the jungle
goods and your slingshot, your military grade slingshot and crossbow.
All the survival. My Alex Jones food supplies that I ordered over the years, survival shield X2, etc.
Super male vitality that you take every day.
Super vitality.
All the pills to dealkalize your water.
Right.
whatever.
But no, it was
gland,
it was pretty bad. All jokes aside, though this is a kind of a apocalyptic cycle that California has existed in for a very long time. Maybe we'll do an episode soon based on some readings I've been doing that are pretty interesting about the history of California climate and ecological disaster and the man-made kind of aspects of that. But that was just in the last 2 weeks. I mean, God, over the interregnum, what do we had? We had the Luigi Mangione saga, which we haven't really talked about. We had the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, which we mentioned a little bit in our next Palestine episode. We have, let's see, David Lynch is dead as of today. David Lynch, R.I.P., the TM Lord. Auteur himself. Tough 1-2 punch for Los Angeles.
We had recently like a ceasefire in Gaza.
Right.
Seems to be the case. We'll see like what that actually entails and how well it holds, because it's still pretty early stages right now. But
right.
It's at least a bit of a relief.
Yeah.
And a
crossed.
huge indictment. I do agree. It's a huge indictment of Joe Biden's administration. I don't know like how this will evolve, like, and what actually it will bear out to be, but still it does show that like such a thing could easily have been imposed at any time, and that like
we'll see if things come out in down the road, if there was some kind of like October surprise intrigues going on with this in terms of Trump. And
definitely there were.
Right now in the media.
Absolutely, yeah, there were, but still,
I know, absolutely. Rest in piss, Brandon. Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. You were a terrible president and a piece of shit. So the era of Brandon, we've made it. SJ has made it through the entire reign of Brandon, I guess. We started right before he took office. And now here we are, halfway through the decade, which I can kind of just feel it in my bones, in the air. And I think a lot of other people are too. There's a lot of discourse around kind of the 2020s actually starting now. When we talk about decades, how they don't really start right on 60 or 70 or whatever. Like, you could argue that many people argue the 60s started with the assassination of JFK, or maybe the real 70s started around Watergate, the 70s as we remember them. Or, the 90s not really starting. The 90s started a little earlier, but I would say with like the collapse of the Soviet Union and like the rise of grunge at like the end of 91.
Roughly 10-year like historical units. Yeah, obviously they're not gonna, I guess that,
or 9/11
if you wanted to,
the start of the 2000s.
If you wanted to periodize things that way, like obviously, it would either have to be based on the numbers or like I guess based on vibes, in which
this is a vibes-based science.
Yeah.
All this stuff are constructs, right?
Sense.
That that are sometimes little better than parlor tricks, but they are kind of fun to think about. And I do think about, that I forget who originally termed this on Twitter, but like the concept of the long 2014, that we've sort of been stuck in this cultural and political loop for roughly the last like 10 years or so. And now, while there's a lot of like troubling things on the horizon, it does feel kind of like, I don't know, maybe we're finally escaping that like long 2010s sort of culture.
I don't know. How much do you really credit like the idea of the long 2014? I just feel like, I don't know, a lot of people maybe feel like their lives are kind of stagnant or not very dramatic, but really a lot has happened since 2014. COVID, the entire Trump presidency the first time, something that in 2014 was a laughing stock.
Unthinkable. That is
like,
true
a
about
lot
the
has
long
happened.
You could say the long like 2017.
Our entire elite class has come out and openly declared their worship of an AI deity. No,
you're right. Things have changed.
Israel committed a genocide, or
Yeah, well, you could argue they were doing that in 2014 too. and we were also not doing much about it.
Yeah, but there was October 7th,
There was October 7th. I mean, there was obviously the Russia-Ukraine war. There's
all
a lot
the things
now.
you just mentioned. Bashar al-Assad. That was something that, like, in 2014, I guess people did say, like, maybe he was about to go, but then it almost seemed like it might never happen.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So maybe, I think, long 2014, not an airtight. That's something maybe we'll return to later. Not a
But people have definitely been talking a lot
for,
about like a vibe shift culturally. But again, I don't know how much to like really credit that because I see a lot of the, I don't know.
I think
it's kind of wish casting on a big level a lot of the time when people talk about these things. And I
think on both the right and left, I think there is some wish casting because on the one hand, I think, say like a lot of like leftist people would love the sort of Obama, Pelosi, like neoliberal Democrat monopoly on like the sort of liberal left to like finally collapse and be maybe contested or at least changed or like that feels stuck in 20. I feel like for the Democratic Party, they were kind of stuck in like the long 2016, if you will, like of like the aftermath of Trump winning,
and now they're going back to 1994, like if
bit,
anything, probably like what.
So that might change, but I also don't see them really changing their stripes overnight.
One thing that's changed is that like I don't think there will be any enthusiasm for like the equivalent of Bernie, which would be AOC, I suppose.
Yeah, AOC,
maybe if Rashida Tlaib ran for president, then there could be enthusiasm. But
she's like, the only, which they would never allow. They would never allow.
She would get crushed. Unfortunately,
she's the only member of the so-called squad that I would like say that I have like any real degree of like respect for.
Yeah, I like Ilhan Okay. Like, she's also imperfect, and she's definitely like I would say that I like Rashida Tlaib more, but. Also, Ilhan can't run for president.
Right. So, I mean, it's very slim pickings. And you're right. I don't think there's going to be like a Bernie kind of figure now. I think people are... Well, first of all, there just isn't that figure. AOC is like too much of a sellout. And also people are like more cynical than they were in, 2015 or 2019. It's going to be like, without offering anything that even seems substantively like more radical. And it can't just be like NGO, like Green New Deal, and also Trump is dangerous. Like whatever his 2020 platform was, where he kind of like melded more with like the NGO, like liberals, a little bit, and sanded off some of those rough edges, which probably hurt him ultimately. But anyways, I mean, he's cooked. He's a warmonger. He sucks. But even a lot of the DSA people feel that way now. Like, in a way
absolutely.
They would have defended him to death. But
like in 2016, like if AOC were running, basically AOC's politics like are maybe even a little bit to the left of Bernie's, like or at least identical. Will you give me identical? You're going to tell me Bernie's to the left of AOC,
right.
really?
I think she's actually to the right of Bernie, which is not to say that like Bernie's like a heckin' leftist, like badass. Like I think she just like her vibe is, I think because she's so
it's just
affective.
the vibe. It's just the vibe. That's purely based on vibe. Like I get it. Bernie seems like more authentic because he's like been around for a long time and like he was involved in actual left wing movements. But in terms of like at one time, but in like in the distant past, but in terms of like their actual stated policies, like what is really the difference? But anyway, my point is that like.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever. Even if Bernie like were 20 years younger and he ran again, I don't see people like having like enthusiasm for him in the way they did before. And good, but also like and there's really no alternative because like I said, if we did have like who would be the candidate like Rashida Tlaib or whoever someone who actually had like compelling politics, they would get crushed in the same way that Bernie did. Like he would be they would be conspired against. They would just be pushed out. So I think it's going to end up, I don't know, again, like I think we might end up being right about J.B. Pritzker. However, Gavin Newsom is also a possibility, or they might get out. If anything, they could get outflanked by someone like from the right. Like it's definitely good. I feel like it's going to be like the Bill Clinton to Donald Trump's Ronald Reagan is what we're going to get from the Democrats going forward.
I am seeing there's a lot of capitulationism kind of going on right now with a lot of the Democratic elites, or at least like the vibe is different from, say, 2016, 2017, where they did view Trump as just this like irksome aberration that they could just sort of brute force, like sort of snuff out or, beat in elections and like humiliate and dismiss from politics. Now it's like, okay, well, they're in various stages of acceptance that like he beat them. I don't know though. It's going to be, I'm not super excited to see what steps they take, because I feel like they're going to be like, whether they're collaborating with Trump, it's going to be bad, or if they quote unquote resist him again, it's going to be like the first time where it was like the worst possible, the most kind of toxic way you could resist Trump. It does seem like
they
aren't
really planning on like resisting Trump in the same way. Like they seem to have like dropped that, and like now, I don't know, yeah, like they lost, or like regrouping, and they're trying to figure out, like, it's weird because I almost feel like there was a confluence of factors that like led to like that are like clear. Like, first of all, I think like some people may overestimate it. That's the whole thing, like, oh, you're saying like people actually care about Gaza. Like, yes, I am saying that, and I think that like that had more of an impact than people think, like on an effective level, on like an optics level. Like, I think that contributed more than like some of these like wonky people will admit to like the appearance of like the decrepitude of like Joe, and like the perfidy of Joe Biden's administration. I really do. Like, just the fact that like in like key districts in Michigan, they were like losing to Jill Stein. That is meaningful.
Trump like, and Jill Stein.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, Michigan. I'm not like Mr. like honk honk, like wonkety, like actually, like. But to me, that seems meaningful. Like, whatever, come at me with your political science degree and all that stuff. Like, fine, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems meaningful to me. And I just also think Kamala was a terrible candidate who like would never have won a primary, and Joe Biden was senile, and like all those things. And also like deeply committed to a genocidal war in like a deranged way. That was a huge issue that no one even wanted to acknowledge, and we just want to sweep under the rug in some of these circles. But like, as we've talked about this at incredible length, but in the past. But anyway, like, I think that Trump winning was kind of to be expected, but they like have taken all the they've taken all the wrong lessons from it, basically, as we knew that they would. They've just concluded, like, we basically need to be more fascist and become more like Donald Trump, which is not really true.
I guess the racism, like maybe we should be more racist.
Yeah, like, it's not like those things about him are necessarily winning. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure people like are like concerned about like the border or whatever, and like, but I don't think that those are the things that like really won it for him, or like are what are so compelling about Trump at all.
Right.
Like it's
right.
Yeah,
well, that was always what made me a little uneasy about the sort of the rad lib like establishment, kind of like the mono focus on like he's a racist. And it's like he is, but like there's also different types of like in terms of the utter centrality of like why he's popular and why people would vote for him and everything. I think the takeaway that like 50% of the country are like active, conscious racists that are orienting their entire politics around hating people of color, and that's all they care about. It's like, yes, but I hate to be like it's more complex than that, but like it kind of was more in terms of like explaining why he would win, like why he could win. I mean, you could throw out all kinds of quotidian problems like inflation and like the declining economic fortunes of like everybody. And I mean, I do think it is interesting the fact that he, partially as a result of great effort from the right, like increased in all these minority demographic groups, like increased his share of the vote, sometimes like somewhat substantially, and even among Latinos, like almost half. I think, he won Latino men, I think. He lost Latinos like a little bit, but it was like 45, 55.
I mean, he did like well with Muslims as well, and with Arabs. And I think that part of that has to do with the fact that he treated Muslims and Arabs, not like identical groups. Like there's many, like, you know, most Muslims in the world aren't Arab, and most Arabs in the United States aren't Muslim. But like he treated those groups like they mattered, whereas the Democrats did not. Like
emphatically did not. Yeah.
Like treated as like they were worthless, you know? So like,
and so,
that I think is
they
true. Like he courted those groups, you know, like he made an effort. Whereas like, the Democrats really, like in many high profile incidents, like Obama telling black men that they were misogynistic for having doubts about Kamala or whatever. Like they almost seemed like they were like aggressing against a lot of those groups, you know, or like daring them to vote against them, you know? So
there was a kind of an arrogance of like, you better fucking get in line, and like, no, we're not going to give you anything concrete. Shut up, vote for us. And like, that's just never a good look. And I think their real faces kind of shown in this campaign more than they did in past ones, of like the kind of arrogant elite like venality of a lot of these people. Like Obama, not just like saying that, but also like lecturing literally a room of like black men who were like volunteering for Kamala. That was such a horrible, like, just such a bad vibe moment of like, what are you doing, you know?
Yeah. And, I mean, in terms of the whole like thing of like, oh, you know, the basket of deplorables stuff, like, you know, are people animated by like hatred of people of color? Like, definitely, like I would say no, and I think the libs are correct that we are probably going to see, like, if indeed mass deportations like begin in the way that like they've been described, like, you know, and one assumes they will in some, like, at least to some extent, like we will see a lot of like, oh, but not you, you know, like not my friend, like I didn't mean them, you know. That's like most of the way that like that is, you know. It's not like these people are like deeply ideologically committed racists. I do think that on both sides, this is not good. And like, I think that it should, and I like, you know, some people did try to resist it, but unfortunately, like everything just started circling the drain of like culture war bullshit. And that's really what it is. It's not about like race per se for most. It's about like merit and like DEI and like these buzzwords, like in the,
I would agree,
you know,
that there's
the
like
media
a grab
and
bag
including
of things.
social media have like pushed like aggressively, you know, like
yeah,
people don't like, I'm not saying that it's like cable news where people get their news from, like a lot of people don't get, but like from like Facebook, Twitter, or sorry, X, whatever, you know, these things are unavoidable. And those have become, I think, a big axis of people's political beliefs, you know, which is
pun intended
sad, but you know, it happened. You know, like
there's kind of a grab bag of culture war issues that kind of come in like a package that I feel like that's what people care about. And there are things in that package that are definitely like heavily tinged with racism. Like a lot of the DII, like complaining about, you know, LA burned because we have a DII mayor or something. And it's like, 'cause it's a black woman mayor. And it's like there's a lot of angles about corruption in California politics, and definitely with like the Democratic machine in California, but like that's just kind of a dumbass like knee-jerk kind of reaction to like, oh look, it's like a black woman who's in charge and like must be a DEI. But then there's like, it's connected to all these other things of like, well, the elites, like they're using the DEI because they hate real Americans and blah blah blah. So like even in their kind of like they're like right-wing cosmology, it's like, oh well, Karen Bass is just a puppet. The real. And then, you know, maybe it's Soros who's the big bad guy, but maybe it's like the Clintons, and, you know, maybe it's like Pelosi, you know, and like that's just kind of like this slightly confused anger that I think in a broad sense is kind of justified towards those elites, you know, because they do fucking suck and they're venal and they're evil and corrupt and everything. But it's a little, it gets a little jumbled when you go through like the X meat grinder of information, you know, mediation and all these other mediators now. I mean, that's the other big thing we're talking about. And this is, you know, I guess we are a new media, you know, podcast. Everyone's talking about podcast now is the new battleground of, and I think, you know, I'd like credit to Barron where it's due, you know, getting him to go on all those like Bus and Zoomer podcasts, like for Trump, probably was kind of a game changer in a subtle way. And I think is gonna, like, you really see when you turn on MSNBC or like CNN now, especially MSNBC, because it's getting literally like ripped apart and like rebranded and shit. Like it's just like the last people playing violins on the Titanic kind of feeling of like nobody's watching this shit anymore, you know, and people are going to just get like like gathering a panoply of these different sources, whether like video podcasts or audio podcasts or little things on TikTok, and people are assembling their own little media diet now out of, whether it's Substack or anything else. And so that's going to be interesting. Obviously, that field is, hate to break it to anybody, but our listeners probably know that this new media field is just as ridden with psyops and like cultural manipulation as the old media, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think,
yes, definitely.
Listeners of SJ should not be surprised about that.
Yes.
So I think, that's the other thing we didn't really talk about, but maybe it'll come up in one of these questions, is the strange New Year's Day like terrorist attacks that from Fort Bragg, like military guys, in New Orleans and Las Vegas. And in the Las Vegas one, where allegedly a special forces operator blew himself up in a Cybertruck outside of the Trump Casino Hotel, is that like he had sort of emailed this podcaster, Sean Ryan, who's like straight out of Joe Rogan's Central Casting. And there's a whole crop of these guys now. These like fucking ex like special forces operators who just love like drinking some good whiskey and like talking about like guns and like how trans sports is bad. Like it's just like such a specific guy. And Sean Ryan is like this guy. And most of these guys got known from going on Rogan all the time, Mr. Alternative himself, where despite whatever Rogan, like, he supported Bernie and like was kind of an anti-war hippie kind of guy, but then he just like fucking loves these special forces dudes. And like whatever they say, he will just like absolutely believe them, And so there's been I think, what is it? Mike Baker is another one that always goes on, like Jocko Willink, and these other people. And they go, and because, they have the experience, like they can tell you what the fuck is up and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But a lot of them have become celebrities. So like the guy who allegedly blew himself up had emailed a friend of Sean Ryan's, and then like this guy brought it on the show, and there was a whole thing about it, and he brought up like UFOs and how he was being chased by the FBI, but he had a VBIED in a Cybertruck, so they were like keeping their distance from him, and like he was trying to go to Mexico, and he just wanted to get in touch with like this podcaster to like reveal something about like Chinese UAPs that like couldn't be shot down. Like it was some crazy weird. And then he has this like CIA lady coming on saying that Al Qaeda already has cells in America, and like, they have a plan, and like they're just waiting. Like this year they're gonna pop off, and like they're gonna do a big 9/11 attack on us. And it's like, what the fuck is going on here? Like I hope there's not a 9/11 attack, because these motherfuckers are gonna go crazy and psyop the shit out of everybody.
I mean, we already saw like with October 7th like a little bit of the like 9/11 energy come back, and like you could definitely like sense it like in the coverage of that incident for sure. It's like simmering under the surface, like it's ready to rear its head at the slightest like opportunity. For sure.
Right. And then when you look at these guys, the guy in New Orleans who did the classic pledged his allegiance to ISIS like 20 minutes before doing a lone wolf terrorist attack, and they got killed. And like I think I saw a picture of the ISIS flag he had with him, but I don't even think it was an ISIS flag. It was like, it was a flag in Arabic and stuff, but like it might have been a Tawhid flag, but like it wasn't like the classic ISIS, like that's a very iconic flag. Yeah. And it was like a little different. But if anyone sees like a black and white flag with like, Arabic on it, oh, it's ISIS, and that guy was fucking weird and crazy. And it's kind of,
yeah,
again, one of our
he was an
questions
interesting. One of these questions does kind of touch on this, if I recall correctly. But that was very. And it was. I mean, a lot of my friends were commenting on how there were a lot of. And again, it like, to be fair, I guess it was like sort of during the sort of media frenzy around ISIS. So maybe that like helped to kind of I guess the sort of non-conspiratorial narrative would be that. That helped to kind of fuel and inspire these type of things. But on the other hand, it was kind of interesting how it just sort of like switched off like a faucet, and it like became different types of terrorism that were more suited to the sort of political discourse and the political needs of the day. And then right when you know, it would be like opportune for us to, you know, maintain a foothold in, you know, ISIS's old sort of stronghold of Syria, like this quote unquote ISIS attack occurs. It was, you know, yeah,
you gotta ask some questions.
A little bit too much like clockwork for my sensibilities. I don't know. It's a bit, yeah, and like the guy having been in the military, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
An absolute nest of like special ops criminality and susness. Yeah, who can say what's going on today? But it all feels like what I've been calling it Turbo Gladio. The age of Turbo Gladio is upon us. But yeah, one of our questions deals with that. The last thing I wanted to bring up, just because it's interesting for 2025, and maybe it does represent a certain shift, is I was reading this very interesting Guardian article maybe like 2 weeks ago about how the Bilderberg Group is sort of attempting a makeover in this new era, especially with Trump coming back and everything. And they're kind of opening up. They're not being as secretive as they used to be. Now, I don't know if we've definitely mentioned the Bilderberg Group before. I mean, kind of a classic of like conspiracy culture. Like Alex Jones infamously used to like fly there and like yell on a bullhorn outside, like, "You globalists, we know you're in there."
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Like, blah blah blah. But I mean, for real though, it is one of those like things that, you know, putting aside Alex Jones hating it, like it is pretty sus. Like it, you know, started by Prince Bernhard in the Netherlands and had a bunch of like royalist, like aristocrat, sort of Nazi collaborator people, military people, spooks, you know, and kind of was like the private planning committee of sort of like the NATO Euro-American alliance, like from the Cold War and into today. But now it's kind of changing a little bit. In fact, you could say that Bilderberg is doing a little DEI, right? Where some of the names that popped up that are now on like the steering committee or the governing committee of Bilderberg really kind of blew me away. Like, not super shocking, but it's interesting that like people that we see on TV all the time that are like pretty engaged public figures on both the left and the right are, you know, part of Bilderberg.
Yeah,
now.
Stacey Abrams.
That's the biggest one. Stacey Abrams is on the governing committee of the Bilderberg Group now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I've never been all that impressed with Stacey Abrams. Like, I never understood why like MSNBC libs would be like, "Oh, if only she could run for president. She's just so brilliant." And I'm not trying to sound like an anti-DEI kind of guy, but like she's like as our friend Peter would say, a Sorosite. Like literally worked for like a George Soros NGO in Georgia, I believe, for years, and has always been like one of these NGO people and has like run for office several times and like lost. So it's like I get that. Like,
I think
she's
the
like,
idea is like she organized everything so well and like delivered Georgia in 2020. That was like what everyone was all like excited about Stacey Abrams.
Right.
Yeah, I remember there was like some episode of like, what was it? Like some sci-fi show, like Star Trek or something, that had like one of these new Star Treks that had like Stacey Abrams as like president of the world or something, and like,
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I mean, I would compare it also a little bit to like the hype around Beto O'Rourke, like this like fail son who is just like never really did anything, but like because he kind of checked off all the affective boxes of like a guy that they'd want to see, like the perfect kind of new Obama era Aaron Sorkin ideal of like a cool liberal president, cool Gen X guy, that like people just elevated him to like these insane levels. And like, it's funny how most of that new,
and
quote
also
unquote,
he's
new
all like
crop
that
is like
debate
flamed
energy,
out.
You know, he can like
yeah, well, he
own you by your
weaponizes
own
therapy
logic.
speak like AOC, like that. People love that shit. But no, Stacey
They
Abrams,
did.
you know, I mean, call me, you know, I have egg on my face because I doubted her. She has risen all the way to the top of the managing committee of the Bilderberg Group now. And, you know, good for them, honestly. Good for them. I'm glad to see that they're really opening up to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Another, I think, primary member now is Fareed Zakaria, who, you know, is a big CNN dude. I saw that he just dropped a documentary about. It's interesting knowing now that he's a Bilderberg guy, but he made this like documentary about the history of America first. you know, that is about like from kind of the New Deal era up through today, like the sinister influence. I mean, which honestly was sinister at various times, but like this, but for him, like sinister for like sus reasons, right? Because like they were skeptical of NATO. Oh my God, you know, it was so horrible. They just didn't believe in NATO enough. And so it's interesting. He's like putting out this content on CNN about how, you know, how scary and wrong America First is. But I should note, lest we think that, you know, Bilderberg is now just a bunch of DEI globalist, like liberal Soros people. The two main people in Palantir are also affiliated. Peter Thiel has been affiliated with the Bilderberg Group for years. And of course, you know, is very prominent now in the new Trump administration. But also Alex Karp, his like weird, like Frankfurt School CEO of Palantir, who used to describe himself as like a socialist, but is like a bloodthirsty, basically like liberal freak, but was a big supporter of Kamala during the election. I think he gave like a speech at maybe the Reagan Foundation dinner like a couple months ago. He just that all the conservatives were like sharing is like, we need more energy like this from Silicon Valley. And he's like, if you hurt America, we are going to make you suffer. We are going, your family down the street, like something's going to happen to them. That's what we need to get back to. Make people afraid of America. This is like the liberal guy at Palantir saying this shit. But he's also deeply involved in Bilderberg shit as well. So, you know, it's interesting to see what will happen with like the future of NATO and this new kind of, you know, it kind of makes sense that because the EU seems to be dominated by this kind of like Sorosian kind of
Atlanticist
neoliberalism that they are like not gonna let go of. Like this is their fucking shit and they love it. But at the same time, you know, Trump is like
Eric Schmidt is also on the steering committee of Bilderberg. You know,
they're probably all up in the AI thing, right? You know, So you know, but now I wonder if is Alex Jones gonna keep popping off about Bilderberg now that all these cool Silicon Valley guys and people close to Trump.
What's going on with Alex Jones these days? Because I remember InfoWars was like going to get shut down, and then
he's back. No, now I think he lives on X for the time being, and he just kind of posts on like Rumble and X. Like he seemed
to be on Ozempic the last time I saw him.
Though he keeps like taunting people in like I saw him splashing around in like a pond outside of Austin the other day, and he was like, "Oh, this ain't Ozempic, bitch. This is 1776." He does seem to have gotten. He's back to like his, you know, like the shape he was in maybe like 15 years ago, where he's, you know, he's always like a thick little guy, but like he was kind of ripped, you know, and then he got really big for a long time. But definitely, I mean, he's kind of got this new slick kind of like appearance to him. But he is just as Alex Jonesy as ever. You know, sometimes I pop in on him on X when he's doing his live streams, but he seems to be back. For a while, he was like not hosting InfoWars a lot. He'd give it off to his little millennial like minions that would fill in for him, and he'd do the Rachel Maddow thing where he'd do like one day a week. But now it seems like since Trump won, he's back, baby. And I think a judge like paused the sale of InfoWars The Onion that everyone was like all excited about.
Freaking epic. Like
freaking
The Onion's
epic.
Gonna own Alex Jones with
changed
like
their
hilarious,
company.
subversive humor. Yeah,
like The Onion changed their holding company to like Global Tetrahedron LLC to be like, we're like in a crazy conspiracy. You know, but it seems for the time being, Alex Jones is he has survived. They can't get rid of him. But anyways, perhaps we should get into our questions as we start this crazy year.
人は誰でも持っているみんなの心に持っている遥かな虫の過去から持っている人に誰でも隠れてるみんなの心に隠れてる無明の闇を越えて超越人力 りによって主従によって得る世界悟りによって下脱によって自由自在に君は使える天に多神宿妙天元老人天に多神宿妙天元老人無明の闇を越えて超越人力だ。
I guess I'll read the first one from March 9th, 2022. And I'm going to say up front, I think this is going to be a partial punt, but we could talk about it for a minute because it's like, it's a very rich story. So TD Wash asked, have you guys ever looked into the Tokyo subway sarin gas attacks or / Shinrikyo to examine any Gladio MK elements to the events? So yeah, that's the cult that attacked the Tokyo subways with sarin gas in 1995.
Yeah, famous terrorist attack.
Yeah, Aum Shinrikyo, kind of a tricky name to say, but I think I got it right. Led by this mysterious mystic who adopted the name Shoko Asahara. And yeah, this is like a very sus. I think actually
they had a subsequent attack too, like right, like they in 2019 there was some other kind of like
somebody
car
drove
attack.
A car into a crowd. Honestly, like just reading over the Wikipedia article about this group, I didn't realize how prolifically violent they were. Like it wasn't just the I mean, the sarin gas attacks is like pretty extreme, even by the standards of like terrorist cult whatever groups. Like if their plans had gone off like more successfully, there were other bombs they had planted that ended up like failing but would have killed like thousands of people, and they were dealing with like chemical warfare agents and shit. But the amount of like targeted assassinations that this cult engaged in against like its critics and prosecutors that or journalists that spoke out against them, like grisly murders, many of which they like got away with until the sarin gas attacks, and then it was kind of they went back and kind of linked them to all these things. But like very like sus, insane, scary doomsday cult. They did eventually arrest Asahara, and I think he was sentenced to death and hung in 2019. I think that car attack was actually linked almost like a reaction to the execution of Asahara and a few other members of the cult that had been on death row for years, etc. But there was a lot that I think one could get into here from the occult angle, because this guy was
just talking about their like I mean you can continue, but just talking about like their like ideology and like their like beliefs is interesting.
It's very much like it's a lot of traditional kind of like Japanese like Shinto and Buddhist beliefs like combined with like Christian millenarianism and also like Nostradamus prophecies and like Protocols of the Elders of Zion and like a bunch of other shit.
And it's kind of like Scientology-esque, like with an anime twist. Like
they actually did. Did you see the anime that I posted in the workflowy?
I think so. Yeah,
there's like an opening of it with like Asahara like flying around in like a lotus position like over like Tokyo. Like it's insane. Honestly, it's wild. They did make an anime for a while, and I guess they were also. They manufactured, both bioweapons, but also like LSD, methamphetamine. I think there were allegations that they would use LSD in their rituals. Yeah, there's a book called The Cult at the End of the World from the 90s that would probably be good to read. And also appears that they might have had Yakuza connections, because I think after the sarin attacks, when there were like crowds outside of their compound, I think there was like a journalist there who was stabbed by a Yakuza member in like a targeted attack, like a journalist who was critical of the cult. And so there's like shit like that. Then I think Reed brought up when we were doing our Biosphere 2 episode that they had like a a cattle station in Western Australia, the Bonjawarn station, that they owned. And this is like, I guess, pretty far out, like in the outback, or whatever. That was not a good Australian accent. So they owned it in 1993, and I think they were testing their like sarin delivery systems on sheep at this farm out in the Australian outback. So they did have an international presence, and even after the sarin attacks, the followers continued to like do stuff around the world. I saw that I think a group of them were kicked out of Russia in the 2010s. There was also a huge group of them for some reason in Montenegro, former Yugoslavia, either in the 2000s or the 2010s, that was arrested and were accused of like being up to something criminal and bad. Oh yeah, Montenegro crackdown. In 2016, the Montenegro expelled 58 foreigners suspected of being associated with Shinrikyo. 4 were from Japan, 43 were from Russia, 7 from Belarus, 3 from Ukraine, and 1 from Uzbekistan. Interesting that they're all like former ex-Soviet like converts to this cult. So they must have kind of been, I guess also in 2016, that was when Russia, a month after the Montenegro crackdown, Russia opened a case against the followers and conducted raids in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And then in September, they banned Shinrikyo from the country, declaring it a terrorist organization. Yeah, so I guess the U.S. did designate them as terrorists for many years. I think they removed it a couple years ago because they said they're finally defunct now. But yeah, I mean, I'd say this group scores pretty high on the in the Gladio Index for being like some kind of sus thing that might have had backers that made themselves useful. There's really a lot we could get into because one thing I noticed is that they had various interactions with sort of other cults that were kind of active in Japan at that time. And a lot of these groups, I think more people are aware now after the Shinzo Abe assassination, but a lot of these like weird culty groups were extremely like nationalist and right wing and affiliated with like the Liberal Democratic Party, basically the ruling party of Japan. And were actually like pretty plugged in to political power. These were not like totally off on their own, like no interplay with like
you kind of have to be
power.
Right, like because you need to get like recognized as a religion, and like something like comes, it's like a sort of like different system, yeah, like you need to, that was a whole big thing for them, right, that they needed to like be like get like religious recognition.
Right. Yeah. Like there was a rival cult called Happy Science, or formerly known as the Institute for Research in Human Happiness, that was founded in 1986 by former Wall Street trader Ryuho Okawa, whose followers regarded him as the incarnation of a supreme being from Venus. So I think these guys bumped up against the Shinrikyo cult in maybe the early 90s. And just to give you an example here, it says that they believe in the principles of happiness known as the fourfold path, and love, peace, happiness, blah blah blah. At the same time, the organization's political wing, the Happiness Realization Party, promotes political views that include support for Japanese military expansion, support for the use of nuclear deterrence, and denial of historical events such as the Nanjing Massacre in China and the comfort women issue in South Korea. Some other views include infrastructure spending, natural disaster prevention, urban development, and dam construction. They also advocate fiscal conservatism, strengthening the U.S.-Japan alliance, and a virtue-based leadership. Wow, amazing. So, yeah, they believe that they worship a deity named El Cantare, who they believe is the highest god of Earth, the Lord of all gods. They believe that the being was first born on Earth 330 million years ago, and that it is the same entity that has been worshipped at different times as Elohim, Odin, Thoth, Osiris, Hermes, and Shakyamuni Buddha, with Okawa himself as the current incarnation.
I guess that makes sense, because like that would overlap with all of Ashihara's claims about himself. So
right. Yeah, exactly. So they, I guess, Shinrikyo, they had a bitter rivalry And it culminated in a failed assassination attempt on Okawa using the nerve agent VX injected into the air conditioning system of leader Ryuho Okawa's car. It was one of the many VX attacks by ALM members leading up to the subway sarin attack in 1995, which killed 14 people and injured more than 5,000. So yeah, they tried to get him with that VX gas. They did a lot of like trying to gas people in like assassination plots. Like they found out a way to aerosolize, I think, sarin in like a delivery truck that then they like backed up to like an apartment building.
Yeah, they actually
where
tried
these
to
judges
do an anthrax attack.
Oh, that's
too.
right. Yeah,
in
they did, but it
1993
kind of
too.
failed.
Yeah.
They tried a lot of bioterror kind of attacks. And I mean, honestly, it's like when you watch like the anime, it's like pretty creepy. Like the creep factor of this cult. I always thought, like looking at the leader Asahara, just like the famous like mugshot of him, that like he just looks like such like a incel, like neat, like basement dwelling, like loser. That the idea that people are running around like stabbing people with like VX needles and like killing them like for him. And then I watched this like goofy anime where he's just like floating around in like a lotus position being like an ascended master. Like it's kind of scary shit. Like, you know, when you think about them all being on like LSD and like doing these weird fucking rituals and like everything. It's honestly, it's a lot. The Japanese new religious movements in general are really interesting phenomenon. But like I said, maybe at some point this year, we can do kind of a deep dive into it because it hits a couple SJ sweet spots, I think, of like, you know, well, just that natural one of like occultists and like underground illegal paramilitary like intelligence operations. Possibly.
I'm looking at the picture of him levitating right now.
Oh, it's like a real picture of him levitating.
Well,
Allegedly.
I don't know if he's really levitating, but
allegedly.
You know, like this is the proof that was provided. Unfortunately, like it kind of does seem that he's in like from the position of his hair. It seems very much like he's falling, like the gravity is acting on him in this picture, unless his hair is like gelled up. But yeah.
Yeah. Pretty scary guy. Yeah. So
I wonder if he believed he was levitating when this picture was taken or not. Yeah. Anyway.
He certainly claimed to believe that he could levitate.
He definitely did. Yeah, that was one of his biggest claims to fame.
Yeah. So this is pretty heavy shit. But yeah, I think we'll good question. I think we're gonna
well, before we totally leave it, you know, like what's like the like Gladio like angle, if there were one.
Well, they say Gladio / MK. I think you could look at the MK elements as like the classic like post 60s kind of cult brainwashing, especially.
I mean, there's
with
a lot of
the
like,
LSD thrown in.
You could compare it with like Chris Butler's cult, like in a lot of ways. Like, and we talked about like its success in
Scientology.
China. Yeah,
like going like aggressively going after like critics is kind of a Scientology vibe, or Jim Jones. You know, again, kind of similar. Or you know, Falun Gong, another, you know, or the Moonies for that matter.
The Moonies very similar,
there are a lot of precedents to this kind of thing, and since we know the Moonies, they're probably the best example of a cult, a religious cult, you know, that started in Asia that has incredibly deep roots to sort of like international Gladio, like World Anti-Communist League, sort of parapolitical activities, right? Like I think there's like a mountain of evidence of Reverend Moon and his followers like engaging in like just so much fucking shit, like arming Contras and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But for these, like, I guess the Gladio element of like the attacks themselves, I've seen that there's like, it's still disputed what the kind of express motive for the sarin gas attacks in the subways were, because they were already being, I think, raided or investigated for some other crime they had done. And there's some speculation that Asahara ordered them to do that to like distract the police resources from them, I don't know, catching them doing something else or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like they wanted, like similar to the Science of Entity Foundation, it does seem like they like kind of aspired to political power, but they weren't able to like get it through conventional means. So they maybe tried to take over through terrorism, and exploit the chaos to install Ashihara as emperor of Japan. Maybe not great planning, but yeah. Apparently it was known though as attracting a lot of graduates from elite universities in Japan. I'm seeing
another
a lot of
common
to it.
an extremely common thread that we find with people that get sucked into cults, with John Allen, for example. Half of his followers at Synergy Ranch were either graduates or dropouts from Ivy League universities, and 40% of them were high wasps that came for money. That kind of thing where, you saw it in Jim Jones, you saw it in, go down the list, any cult, you're gonna find people. I think even in the Manson family, you had the famous musicians and people like that, obviously, that were kind of hanging around with them, so prominent people. But yeah, it's funny that I don't know why we think that it's dumb people get sucked into cults, quote unquote, people without education or sophistication are the only ones that would get sucked into these things. Oftentimes it's people with a certain level of sophistication maybe are more susceptible.
Yeah, I definitely don't think there's any correlation between intelligence and cult membership at all. That's my feeling. Some people say you have to be smart in order to trick yourself. It's I don't really know if that's true. I feel it's just all sorts of different people join cults. There probably is a personality factor, I would say, obviously.
Right.
But I don't think it has to do with intelligence necessarily. I think measuring intelligence is tricky anyway. There's so many different ways to be smart. Maybe they all are smart in the way of rationalizing cult beliefs. I don't know, but I don't think generally
I think maybe
across the board.
I think maybe people make that kind of category error because all of these cults seem to make people, all of its members, kind of dumb in the same way. In that they can't critically assess the leader, the guru. They are just completely psychologically enslaved to this person to the point where they'll have to do intellectual gymnastics to justify why they're not an abusive sus cult leader, and they're actually good and things so I think people see that and they're oh well, these people sound dumb, but I don't think you could be the smartest person whatever and still fall for that just as easily as a sort of a simpleton or an uneducated person. So it appears that
and
they're
cults
dumb,
are an extreme example because they are certainly the cults people know of. They're things like Heaven's Gate or things that are sort of sensational in some way or spectacular. And so it's oh my God, how could someone be so foolish as to kill themselves for this or something like that, But really there's a lot of things where people have beliefs that are unexamined and might be described as foolish. It's not really those ones. I think they gain more attention and people are more shocked by them because they're often deadly or they often lead people to destroy their lives, but obviously
they sort of they appear to
from their point of view you're
outside.
Brainwashed and your life is destroyed, because you're not worshiping Chris Butler or whatever.
Well, it's an interesting point. I think you're right. It is kind of a spectrum, and it actually reminds me of something I put in at the end of the part 2 of the Biosphere episodes, where it was a New York Times kind of retrospective about Biosphere, and they interviewed a few of the Biospherians, and they did bring up the kind of cult thing, the cult allegation, and one of them, it wasn't Mark Nelson, but it was another one of the male Biospherians who I think made kind of the unintentionally salient point that's look, when people call us a cult, we're a group and we're all smart people and we have a charismatic leader and whatever, but go to Silicon Valley, how many of those companies it's the same thing. You guys call us a cult, but any successful startup business, which is actually a point Peter Thiel made that I think we read from in our second episode about why you should run your startup as a cult, right? But I think there's a point in there. I don't agree with how he's using it, but there's a point in there about how these corporations, these startup, like these business environments that are more socially acceptable, often, like I've talked before about, getting sort of like Maoist training to work at the Apple store back in 2010, and how like they had fearless feedback, which is basically like Maoist self-crit essentially, and other like psychological things to like shape you into being like, but also, like how the coworkers and more cynical coworkers and I used to joke about certain employees like drinking the apple juice, who they become like a Disney adult, but who like loves Apple and like loves working for Apple, and like, really starts to like believe in Apple and believe in Steve, and believe in them. And it's like the rest of us like, this is just a job. But like some people, and those are the people that often would get like, promotions and become like managers and stuff. And they could rise in the ranks. And so, people told me it's like, oh, when you go to the big spaceship campus in Cupertino, there's like 100-foot banner of like Steve Jobs' face. And I'm like, okay, so how is this different from North Korea? Well, we don't think about it that way because that's business, and he's a great business leader, and it's all, it's all voluntary, man.
And he wore the same outfit every day, and that's normal.
Interesting,
like which he chose to do deliberately, I think, in order to like give himself kind of like an iconic profile, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Holmes did the same trick. And yeah, there you go. That's a great sort of crossover between these two worlds where like she's acknowledged as being like a fraud. But I think, we've probably talked about this before, but really I don't think that there is as much daylight between Elizabeth Holmes and Steve Jobs as people might think. It was just a matter of like, like one's vision was like realizable with effort, whereas like one's wasn't, and there were instances throughout Steve Jobs' career, I think, where his vision like wasn't realizable, but he wasn't, offered up kind of as a sacrificial lamb,
no, he
or
wasn't.
A sacrificial wolf.
At the same time, the work he sort of oversaw did end up like basically succeeding, but then also had like highly unpredictable, deep like consequences, like some of which are like negative, on society and everything. It wasn't all just sunshine and like progress, from the adoption of the iPhone and the iPad and all these other things, and also just contributing to that kind of like unicorn, like cult worship mentality in Silicon Valley, especially in the 2010s, of like these nerds are going to save the world, And like Steve Jobs' success kind of inspired the whole generation behind him, the little millennial Gen X like Gen of like Musk, Zuckerberg, like
also people who like took LSD and like who they all propound like using these substances in order to have like mystical experiences and literally to like understand.
Steve Jobs started that trend kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's the first one to publicly.
It's really not so different if you think about it. Like, I'm the leader and I'm telling you to do this to understand like how to navigate this world of like Silicon Valley, and and they're all just seen as these. Have
a consultation with the
visionaries.
You gotta have a consultation with a corn demon who's gonna give you all the secret technology, but there will be a price for it, etc. No, that's not. Zuckerberg has his kind of like chatted out uniform now, like he switched, but he wears the same thing every time. Like he's got his bussin' haircut and a little chain. And his like baggy tee, and like that's what he wears
chain.
now.
That's
he's got
awesome.
a chain. He's got
that's
the chain.
Super cool. Yeah.
So I think it is like a spectrum where on the most extreme end you have these like high control group like small cults, but then I think there in these larger organizations, I think there are certain like insights that have been gleaned from them, and people still say that. I forget who I saw saying it like very recently. It was like Mark Anderson or something. But no, I'm sorry. It was the biosphere guy I just talked about. But those types of people, I think, like Mark Anderson said recently on Joe Rogan, he started going on a 20-minute rant about weird scenes inside the canyon and like what an interesting book it was. And I was like, what the fuck? Like all these guys they're just like reading the SJ reading list, but like drawing the wrong conclusions from it. And, he said like, it was all like a CIA op, all these bands and stuff. But he's like, but hey,
Oh yeah, I remember.
Don't you want that? I think I brought this up before. Don't you want that music though?
Yeah,
you need the cults and the drugs to like make that great music, so it was all worth it.
That's a disturbing.
It's like, whoa, okay, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
but yeah, so a lot of people look at it as a positive. Like, there's very positive things about kind of cultishly controlling people.
What does Mark Zuckerberg's necklace depict? Like, is it like a microchip or something? Like, what is it?
I don't know. He probably has a story behind it. I just haven't heard what it is. Yeah, I'm not sure. Does it have a little
he explained it. All right, I'm about to read it in the Hindustan Times. Let's see.
Oh no, is it a like
his gold colored chain?
Or something?
I have a feeling that it might be. Yeah, it's a Jewish prayer called Mi Sheberach, which basically is a prayer for health and courage, and it says, "May we have the courage to make our lives a blessing." There you go. Yeah. So.
Okay. Wow, he's getting religious again. Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So
he sings it to his daughters when he puts it to bed. That's nice.
Oh. Okay, fair enough. All right.
Yeah.
Wow, he's so
trad. I guess it's good. Like, it is. Yeah, it is like a kind of a in to like signal your religiosity and like being a family man and like singing your prayers to your kids. Yeah, so makes sense. In a
very way. He's anti-woke now. Like, he's not going to censor anything. He's
I guess he has been practicing like kosher butchery like with his own hands for
we've known about
years,
that for years, remember? Like
yeah
we're like he likes to kill like goats with his own hands.
I mean, I don't actually know if he's been doing I'm also only assuming that there's like a way of butchering goats that's kosher because of Zebeh, because of there's usually kind of equivalence between how Muslims do things dietarily and how Jews do. We have sort of halal.
But I think for him, it was more about like wanting to feel the thrill of the kill. Like, like
I think it was partially that, and it was also, at least as he explained it, it was an ethical thing of like, I want to like appreciate this death if I'm going to eat meat. That's how he framed it at first. But now he can vibe shift and say that he's just doing, Zebeh.
Yeah. So. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we can. Should we move on to the next one?
Sure.
All right. Also, in the same wheelhouse, kind of. You want to read that?
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Young Howler asked on 3/16/2022, is seed oil discourse a psyop? I don't know. What do you? I know you've like avoided seed oils in the past.
Well, yeah. I mean, probably around the time this question was asked. It's interesting to revisit it now because I think Young Howler was asking like during peak seed oil discourse in early 2022. That's when I remember people posting about it all the time. And I think I did experiment with kind of like trying to avoid seed oils, because I read some of these things and. Maybe we'll get into it in a second because now there's like the fact checkers have arrived now that it's 2025. They become aware of this discourse around it and mostly I would say shoot it down, these serious scientists. But I mean, like was it a psyop? Maybe it was, to pave the way for RFK Jr. I don't know. But it did seem to be like, it caught on as a meme among a lot of those like dissident right accounts for a while on Twitter. Like it definitely was, and I don't know if it was just something that organically people it was an interesting thing to like talk about and it just sort of like took on a life of its own, or if it was kind of artificially for some purpose, whether it was just in a group chat or something, they decided we're going to push this. I don't know.
I think the most plausible purpose, if it were something that was orchestrated, like would be that like to sell things. Like you can call that a psyop. It is in a way, but it's like maybe not what comes to mind when people think of like, maybe not having like a military strategic purpose or, like a social control purpose beyond like making money for some kind of like alternative food brands. That's what I would imagine would be
the
psyop if like it were orchestrated.
The Maha industry.
It also
got a
like
boost out of this.
Yeah, but there have been a couple things like that, like raw eggs, raw milk,
raw eggs, there
are
remember
tons
the Liver King? The Liver King guy who was just on steroids?
Yeah, the carnivore diet itself. There's all these sorts of like trends, and some of them do kind of percolate organically. And then people like, come in and try to make money off of it. The paleo diet, whatever, any of this stuff, And like even other types of things like avoiding gluten, some people need to do that, they might have celiac disease or whatever, but then also people might do it for health reasons, or there's money to be made in veganism, things like that. So I think
it's kind of inevitable in America, where everything is kind of designed to make you sick and like slowly kill you, that then like there's going to be like an alternative industry in reaction to that can make money off of like avoiding the kind of, frontline stuff like that promises an escape, an alternative to all this like food that we know generally speaking is like not great for us in the American diet. We do not have like really great health outcomes in this country, and we seem to be getting sicker. And
I also think like it's mostly like processed foods that have like a lot of seed oils, or like seed oil, right? So I feel like if you don't eat like too much processed food, that is healthy for you. So in a way, like it kind of like it might not be for the right
and you know what,
technically,
actually,
or something, I don't know, but
in my several months where I like made an effort to kind of like avoid seed oils, it was interesting because I think I did end up, I would say, like feeling healthier, but I don't think that was necessarily because I was avoiding things that were made with like seed oils. But like you said, I think I kind of would just like use a loose rubric of like, I'd look on the back package of something, and if it said, grapeseed oil or something like that, or corn oil or whatever, I would like not buy it. I would not consume it, and I would look for something that had like extra virgin olive oil instead. Right? Like you'll notice that if you buy really cheap pasta sauces, they're made with seed oils, like, like grapeseed, whatever. But then like the ones that are a few dollars more, which is like traditionally how like good Italian pasta sauces are made, is made with just olive oil and like salt and pepper and like, crushed tomatoes, whatever.
Right.
It has like 5 ingredients. So I think the benefit probably was more from me avoiding hyper processed foods. And I think there's some fair points to be made about, like, I think it might have been around this time that I think a lot of people rightfully kind of beat up on like Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat, because they did pretty much low key ambiently advertise themselves as like a healthy alternative, I feel like, to beef when they came out. And I used to eat that shit sometimes. Honestly, it's like, okay, they did this pretty good. Like, this isn't like a tofu burger. Like, it tastes like a burger. But then, it starts coming out like this is actually extremely processed. And, not just with like seed oils, but with all kinds of other things. Like,
I think a good dietary rule of thumb is like, if something like replicates the taste of something like without being that thing, for instance, like, sugar-free like soda that tastes as good as like sugary soda.
Right,
like that's sus. Like that's,
it is sus.
Like there's no way they're doing that. Like
Totally. It's a good rubric. So like sticking with like whole ingredients like that are kind of more straight from nature, or like the simpler kind of ingredients, and not these like Frankenfoods that have been. And
I'm by no means am I saying that you should drink sugary soda because it's sus. Like sugar-free soda is sus. I'm saying like don't there's no solution to the problem that drink like a bunch of sugar tastes great, but it's bad for you. There's no like out to that, Same thing with the Impossible Burger. There's no solution to the fact that like meat tastes really good.
It just is what it is. Like there's plenty of delicious things to eat if you want to be a vegetarian. You don't need to eat fake beef. Like, you know what I mean? Yes. Like it's kind of a weird. And then, they made a lot of money off that. And I think eventually, like, one of the CEOs of those companies did have to come out and be like, oh, yeah, just to be clear, like, this isn't, like, healthier than beef at all. Like, we make no claim that it's healthier than beef. It's, like, processed, and they have to do a lot of weird shit to it to make it taste good, And so, in that sense, And then, you could even look at a problem like beef where, it's been sort of attacked in the past. Like, red meat is like, oh, it's heart disease, blah, blah, blah. But then, you could also, I think I like to be open to maybe like different paradigms, or like look at the unquestioned assumptions we're all making, and ignoring certain factors, like, for example, that Americans eat a shitload of meat. like a ton of meat compared to other cultures and countries. And in fact, like if we ate it at a rate that we used to eat it, it probably wouldn't really be like a huge driver of like heart disease and obesity and blah, blah, blah. But because we've kind of had this like market driven diet that is like burger every day, like bacon every day, like, you know, like heart attack grill, you know, like
it says something about American culture that like our like quintessential food is like heckin' bacon, to the fact that it has like some kind of weird cultural cachet to it. Like when people know what I mean when I say epic bacon.
Reddit millennials.
Like what?
Freaking bacon, epic. Yeah.
Like, why are you getting like hyped up about bacon? It really attests to like, it is that sort of phenomenon of like putting a picture of wheat on your wall or putting like, you know, the name of a neon sign of like Coors on your wall. Like people are like, it does show like how people can like be like, you know, meat also has that sort of like power to get us like hooks in you in that way.
Right. Wasn't that a recurring bit on The Simpsons where every time Homer would smell he'd get like MK'd by it. Like he'd get like psyoped and his eyes would like glaze over and he'd be like, bacon. I bet that's where a lot of Reddit millennials got it from. Is just like Homer's unabashed, just like hypnotic love of bacon, you know, was so epic and stuff. But
I mean, like, that's like also like a, you know, people would talk about meat that way, like in the past, that like meat, you know, is something that is like addictive, you know, and it can like, you know, shouldn't be eaten too much, you know, because it can really,
Remember Carl's Jr. was like using sex very heavily in like the 90s and 2000s to like sell burger. It was always like a hot babe on a car, like eating a double cheeseburger or something, and like they're really crossing the wires there, and like libidinal desire for, you know, a gigantic burger and stuff. But, you know, I mean, I think it's interesting now to think about, because we couldn't have guessed in 2022 that we'd be on the verge of like the Maha RFK Jr. like Health and Human Secretary. I mean, he might not get confirmed, but I think he will. I think he probably will. Will he? They're gonna
have to pick their battles, because basically every single like appointee, like you could say like, honestly, this person is not qualified.
Clever move to just flood the field with like problematic nominees, and you can only focus on so many.
Yeah.
But he's kind of like a perfect example of this, because even I'm reading one article about seed oils right now where, you know, this started out as like kind of a debate on like fitness forums online, like, you know, and you know, with people that are like personal trainers and health nuts and stuff like that, where some people were, you know, saying that seed oils are industrial, they're bad, and then it kind of like this kind of traveled around a little bit, and then there are people bringing it up on Joe Rogan, a lot of TikToks being made about it. So I don't know, it just kind of like maybe it had its moment, but it's always worth, you know, I mean, on one level, I think about it, like for years, probably since like college, I've only cooked with with olive oil when needed, but mainly like my main oil is avocado oil, which is a little bit more expensive than all these other seed oils. But I mean, and you know, it was my very, I feel like kind of health-noided sister that I think told me years ago, like not in any kind of right-wing way, that like, oh, you should use avocado oil because like it's healthier and it's like extracted from the fruit, and there's like omega-6 or whatever. There's just like stuff that is like can be inflammatory, and also it has a very high smoke point, which is a whole nother level of like how ideal is an oil to use for cooking. I think like avocado oil is at like 500 degrees or something, which means that the oil doesn't like smoke or burn. And in fact, that is a problem with some of these oils. It's not so much the oils themselves, but they have a lower smoke point. So if you're doing a lot of like frying and like high temperature shit with the oil, I do remember reading, again, maybe this is totally debunked, but I do remember reading that like it's not good. Like it's not a good health practice to like burn oil, because it changes the chemical composition of it somehow, and like might introduce these like kind of, you know, chemicals that are like not good. I don't know if they're like carcinogenic, but like they're like not great. So like avocado oil, it's pretty tasteless, and you can kind of use it with anything. and it's very difficult to make it like burn or turn over like that. So like it's a pretty safe one to use. And you buy one bottle of oil and it lasts you for a long time. So I don't mind spending like $5 extra because you can get those big tubs of like seed oil for like $1.50 or something, and I mean, probably, I don't know. I read something about like the omega-6 thing is like actually fake. It's fake news because your body actually like needs omega-6s as like a precursor to like combat inflammation and all these, like Joe Rogan people were saying that like the omega-6 thing is what makes it sus. Is because like what you want, I've heard this for years, omega-3s, that's what you want, right? Like it's in fish oil, right? Omega-3s, like good for your heart, everything else. But omega-6s, those are like sus fatty acids and blah, blah, blah. This also goes into the McDonald's thing where like bring back beef tallow, and in the fries, right? That's a direct seed oil argument, is that they switched to like canola oil in the 90s. But I do remember reading something that like while this author did concede that beef tallow fries were completely delicious and tasted really good, that like they found out that, I don't know, cooking everything in beef tallow was actually like skyrocketing Americans' like levels of heart disease because like of, I think the type of cholesterol, like the bad kind of cholesterol or whatever, or the just the sheer amount of like fat or something.
Wait a minute. I don't even believe that like the fries, because wait a minute. I know McDonald's fries are not halal. So why aren't they halal if it's all vegetable derived? There's something going on.
Wait, what? Oh, they're not considered halal?
I looked into this, like, again, I don't think you should eat McDonald's. You should boycott McDonald's. However, I've been Muslim for quite some time. There have been times at the time when I've thought like, oh, I'd, like some fries from McDonald's. Like they're not halal. Like you can look it up. Like if they were, they'd say so. They won't. So what's going on?
Here, I have the answer. Well, a grain of salt. This is AI generated from Google, but it says...
don't even read that on the show.
Well, like, I know. Well, okay, I'll read it and then we can... McDonald's has a page that answers the question.
Okay, let's see.
Well, their answer is merely from 2018. Do you have any halal restaurants? No, we don't. McDonald's does not offer halal certified food. It's kind of a sus answer.
It is.
I don't know. Like answer. At least apologize a little bit. Oh, but on another page, they say that their meat patties are produced from 100% pure halal beef with no additives. But then on another page, they say none of our food is certified as halal, and McDonald's UK has no current plan. Oh, so in the UK they're asking that. So yeah, McDonald's UK is holding firm. Wow, kind of sus. But then they have a bunch of then on the our ingredients page, they say we are scrupulous about following the laws of Bahrain. Oh, okay, that's Bahrain McDonald's to ensure the highest food safety and halal standards. Blah blah blah. So I guess in Bahrain, the McDonald's is totally halal, but the AI says the fries are cooked in canola oil, but the oil blend used to partially fry the potatoes contains beef flavoring.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, because I do believe like that. For instance, McDonald's in the UK says none of our food is certified as halal, and McDonald's UK has no current plans to introduce halal food at the menu at any McDonald's. I don't know if they're like afraid of like backlash, but like literally like all French fries are halal normally.
You'd think so. It's just vegetable oil.
Exactly.
And potatoes.
Anything that's a vegetable is halal, know. So it's weird that this is a thing. And in the UK, like it's, there's a fair amount of Muslims there. Like McDonald's would want everyone to, eat if they could, right? So, yeah.
Huh. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, other people, just from like a vegetarian standpoint, there's an article from treehugger.com that says that McDonald's French fries are still not vegetarian.
There you go. Yeah.
So they actually do still contain some beef flavoring.
Yeah.
It's also interesting. I guess like the way the beef that's slaughtered for the beef flavoring is not halal, I guess. I guess it's the method of slaughtering,
I think so.
right?
Probably, they probably get that beef flavoring somehow. Yeah.
From some
that
farm.
these animals are slaughtered in like some of the most inhumane and despicable ways ever devised by man. So
yeah. So actually, it's interesting. Yeah, like despite this beef tallow, debate going on, that they actually still have some beef, and probably, I would imagine, to like preserve the sort of beef tallow flavoring, like, but also like not really use beef, basically use vegetable oil, which they did say like was immeasurably healthier for, I guess, if you're eating that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
That a lot of the overwhelming, like the metrics, because I think there was kind of there was like a public action campaign of people that started like protesting McDonald's to get rid of beef tallow, and then they did it, and then I don't know if a law was passed, but basically like the whole industry, also because I think it was like cheaper ultimately to get vegetable oil, to use vegetable oil for a lot of things. But I think like in the early 90s, there was a big shift in like restaurant businesses towards vegetable oils and moving away from beef tallow, because there was a big spotlight shown on like the negative health effects of like cooking everything in lard, basically. So, interesting. So, I don't know. Like, I think that, like, on the one hand, I don't want to be too dismissive, like some of these articles are, like, actually false. Like, vegetable oil has been, like, adjudicated to be completely safe and not bad and sus at all, ever. Like, RFK's lying. There's, like, that kind of, like, trust the science kind of reaction to it, which I don't fully appreciate, because I think there's a lot of things that, could be improved in our food systems and, the way we manage our health and everything. So I think it's fair to ask questions about, like, to poke around and see, like, are there environmental
But I also think that if RFK is positioning himself as like make America healthy again, like you said, there's so much you could do to make America healthy again.
Right.
And bringing back beef tallow as cooking oil would not be even on that list at all. Like,
that's the slightly troubling thing, is like, is he going to go on like a wild goose chase, like following like TikTok health influencer trends?
I mean,
doing
it
this
does
kind of
seem like RFK has
with
some weird beliefs. Like, I'm just saying, like,
for sure.
About like what is healthy and how the body works, like. And, like, how did this dude end up with a worm inside of his brain that, according to him, ate a part of his brain?
That's very strange.
What was he doing with that bear? Like, like, I'm just saying, like, he's fucking weird.
He's a fucked up Kennedy. He's a fucked up Kennedy for sure.
Yeah, he's pretty sus. I don't like.
We'll
trust.
see.
I definitely like, in principle, like, I think it would be great to have like a huge insurgency on that would like, really like put like the sort of the people's feet to the fire who are like manufacturing food in the United States,
right.
Like these big ag companies, things like that, like places like McDonald's, fast food. But do I believe that he's going to do that? Like, maybe, but I just feel like it shouldn't be about, like, I don't know, making sure that the milk is raw or whatever, or something like that, or that it actually has like real blood from the cow in it at McDonald's. Like, like something like that is like not the key thing. I mean, drinking milk all the time, like, isn't really good for you anyway, like, but
it's kind of a weird thing. Like, it's like a weird American thing that I feel like has been like falling off, but like,
yeah,
I don't know that we need to bring it back for grown-ups to be drinking milk like constantly, or, there's probably more. Like, honestly, milk is kind of like, why not drink like kefir that has like probiotics in it, and it's like kind of milk-ish, but it's like a yogurt drink, and it's like really good, and it's like healthy for you. There's like other, I don't know, but like that kind of dairy, like milk has a lot of carbs and like a lot of sugar and like varying amounts of fat depending on what type you get. But it's it's like, I don't think it's like good for you to like, as an adult, to like chug milk like all the time, or whether it's raw or pasteurized. I mean, if we could merely get like the same level of like farming kind of regulate like quality standards that like the EU has, I feel like that would be like a not insignificant improvement to what we have now. Because I feel like the food is just like better in Europe overall. Like most of it is and like the standards for stuff that gets like imported here, like they're just not allowed to like get away with. And I think, I'm sure there is big agribusiness, but we talked about that in the Big Cats thing about, there are a lot of smaller farmers, and some of those countries have like a much like the French, for example. You know, whatever you want to say about the French, like they really care about like their food. They're very insistent about like you can't call that champagne because it's not from that county and blah blah blah. You can't do this. Like the cheese has to be made this way and the bread blah blah. Like people have high standards for certain food items and in America, my God, like we love just munching on like awful treats and like too much meat and like all these other things. And then even when we decide to be vegetarian, we get psyoped by some company being like, eat this fake burger. It's like full of like, you know, processed seed oil shit. And
I mean, I wouldn't like if like he like, you know, if you could like restrict like I think RFK like floated like cracking down on like pharmaceutical advertising directly to consumers. I'm like on board with that basically.
I'm good
like
with that.
you know, like
and
only applying that to like food too. Like I would be down with that too. Like
only the U.S. and New Zealand allow that. That's illegal everywhere else in the world to do. Like ask your doctor about those commercials. Like you know that's not. And it was only legalized in the 90s under Clinton, I believe. Yeah. So you know, and then when you watch some of these dead cable news networks like CNN. All of their ads, at least in the online version, all of their ads are pharma ads. And it's like, okay, they're never going to criticize the people who literally pay for their entire ad budget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's clearly, you're almost like buying their silence by having these like commercials. Because sometimes the commercials are like, are that many people, like, do that many people have moderate to severe plaque psoriasis and blah, 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 blah? Like, and they like need to ask their doctor and they need to find out about it via a commercial. Like that, even the ask your doctor thing is bizarre. It's like, wouldn't you go to your doctor with a condition and the doctor would like recommend a prescription for you, you know? But like this whole, the ask your doctor thing only really existed, I think, in like the 90s, at least on like television. And, but I almost see it as like a way to, like an institutionalized way to bribe the media to never like question your business model.
Yeah.
Like, and just shut the fuck up about it and like never bring it up because like it's just how like Lockheed Martin like always has ads on like Fox News and shit, you know, like it's a way to like pay for silence a little bit, you know, especially in these like economically tough times for media. It's
and like, so, you know, I totally understand hating those people, but like to me, like, again, I think this might be a sort of theme of this Q&A in a way, because like, yeah, like as you said before, like the sort of alternative media is just as deeply sus, and alternative medicine is also like really sus, and like alternative, like, you know, like new age, like food culture has a lot of like sus shit in it too, you know, like
100%.
Like if you're like, I'm gonna redirect like the National Institute of Health to like push psychedelics and raw milk and like chelation therapy for like anything other than heavy metal poisoning, like. I mean, ivermectin, like, whatever. Like, I don't think that you should, like, not have access to ivermectin. Like, I don't think it's dangerous to take ivermectin. Like,
no,
except
like,
maybe
doses,
in excess. Like, so,
it's
like,
not
whatever.
well absorbed
like,
by humans, apparently.
Yeah, like,
that's why it's not, like, but also that's why it doesn't really, like, have an effect on most things except, like, parasitic infections. Because the idea is that it acts upon, it basically kills parasites, but is, like, it's very well absorbed by parasites. Which is why they use it on horses and on people. Yeah. But like it's not very well absorbed by people, which means it basically just passes through you and kills all the parasites. But then I was reading some article that was like, but actually like at much higher doses, like it does have kind of like, it can have like toxic effects. So you don't just want to have this mentality of like, it's a wonder drug. I can just pop like 10 a day, you know, or something like that. Cause then that could be, and, you know, I think people were bringing it up. I don't know if like Mel Gibson went on Joe Rogan and said that ivermectin can cure cancer or something. And they were saying like, well, look, like there's actually been studies about this because like, wouldn't that be great? This cheap generic drug could like, you know, cause cancer. And I think they found that in some people in a study that it potentially had some effects, but only at such high doses that it started to be like neurotoxic and like have really pretty bad side effects. So they like cross it off. Not that it doesn't hypothetically have it, but like, you know, you have to value the trade-offs in any medicine, right? Like it's no good if it like kills you and poisons you, but also like fights the cancer, you know? So in that sense, I mean, I do think it was like it was like this weird overreaction to like people promoting it during COVID. And I feel like a lot of that had more to do with like nothing threatening the emergency use authorization of the vaccines, which were a big moneymaker. Because if any other like a prescription drug could treat it, then you can't have an EUA, you know? Mm-hmm. So it had to be like no drug has any benefit except like the vaccines, whatever. And then the other like 3 or 4 drugs they rolled out. So I think that I didn't like the vibe of people like, oh, were you taking horse dewormer? And it's like, people do take it for malaria. Like, shut up. Like, you know, it was also stupid to take like the horse. You shouldn't take a horse dose of it, obviously. But I didn't necessarily believe the people that were like championing ivermectin as like the secret weapon to like stop COVID. Like maybe it helps a little bit. I don't know. But I think that it speaks to this paradigm of I think a lot of people being fed up with and feeling a little gaslit by like the medical establishment that just like, you need to shut the fuck up because we're experts and it's like, well, you're experts, but you're in like a capitalist marketplace where there's like, you know, there's massive corporations that are trying to like secure very fat paydays off of like the public, you know, off of public tax dollars, which is what they did during COVID. They made a shitload of money. And so I don't know. It's all just kind of fucked. Yeah, it's like, I mean, the way out is sus, but the way where we are is sus. Like,
I feel like there would be so many like good consensus, like for instance, I can think of like one immediately, which is high fructose corn syrup. Right. Like that is something like you get rid of high fructose corn syrup. Like imagine that, you know, like that would be like a super like brave thing to do. Yeah, that should be, if he said, I didn't see that, but if he did, like that should be his top priority or like one of his top priorities.
But you know what? You know what though?
What?
How do you think the corn demon's gonna feel about that?
Well, I don't know. You know,
once RFK goes on his like quarterly ayahuasca retreat, I think corn demon's gonna have some words for him.
Well, that's the other
or
thing.
The corn
like, yeah,
lobby,
that would not
which is
be
a kind of corn demon.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's why high fructose corn syrup is such a big thing because of like this, you know, subsidies for corn and all those things.
They should end the Cuban embargo and import Cuban sugarcane and replace all the corn. Like that's never going to happen. But like in a more beautiful world, that would happen because they have so much sugarcane. You know, like they have more than they know what to do with, but they can't sell it to us. And so we have to drink slop,
it's awful
like
for people.
corn slime.
There's so many things that are like food, like even I think he also has mentioned like food, like coloring, which can like be bad for you. Like who the hell cares? It's just
Yellow
the coloring.
Lake 5.
Yeah. Like they have found that like food coloring, like some food coloring does have deleterious effects like on kids and stuff, which like tend to be the like food consumers who are often like eating like wildly different colored foods, you know, like Fruit Loops or whatever. So like
right, which is just a psyop to get kids to like beg their parents to buy it for them because
like,
it's like cartoon
I need
food.
Blue food. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, what the fuck? Like they need to stop doing that. Like that should be
yeah,
we need to start making things illegal again like that. Like you just can't do that. Like you can't make money that way. Sorry. Like can't do it. I mean, the nice to wish for it,
but that's the thing. If we're like bringing in like an alternative regime that's like based on like psychedelics and you know how helpful they are and like all this weird shit, like I don't know,
very mind over matter crowd, we should say, right? Like sometimes deleteriously, like you know where they really do think that you know. Yeah, like if you just like take psychedelics, open up your third eye, and then also take like ivermectin and like 5 different herbs or something like that's,
hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and whatever. Yeah, like 5 different herbs.
But I mean, the herbs, honestly, we're sleeping on herb knowledge. Tallow, like I feel like the Chinese have way ahead of us in herb knowledge, and we should probably get on that. There's something in there in the alternative health thing that I think is valid, which is that there's like supplements and herbs and things like that you can take to kind of like subtly help your health out and like boost it that aren't just like expensive capitalized medicines that like
for sure,
you have to go, you know, and like, these things would threaten the market dominance.
Definitely. That's definitely true.
Things.
Like there's definitely like there are definitely things out there that are like just as good as like ibuprofen or like a $30 like bottle of Advil that you could grow. 100%. I believe that. Definitely.
Yeah. And just even like vitamins and stuff like sometimes like I remember having conversations with my doctor about like, like, oh, should I take like some vitamins like for blah blah blah, blah blah blah, because they didn't like have a good answer or anything for like what to do like proactively, and they were just like, I don't know, like I don't like they can't like. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, you can't, like, you're a doctor. Like,
honestly,
recommend
like,
some fucking vitamins. Like,
I'm a little bit sussed out by vitamins, like, because one time I started taking, like, a vitamin because I was like, damn, like, I need to be healthier. I should take vitamins, like, that's what people do. And I took, like, these vitamins that were, like, generic vitamins to, like, promote health for, like, men of my age. And I went
like men's vitamin.
Yeah, and I went to go get like not from like like InfoWars, from like Whole Foods or whatever, And I went like to like, or I don't even know if it was from there, somewhere like that. And then I went to go get like my physical, including like all my like blood panels and everything, and I had like these like wildly elevated liver levels. And they're like, what the hell is going on? Like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, oh my God, do I have like liver disease? Like, am I dying? Like, and I obviously don't drink alcohol at all.
No,
so like, but basically it was like the supplement that I was taking that had like some bizarre effect on like my liver, like that made it like wildly, elevated. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah, honestly,
weird.
I would say like if there's any vitamins that I'm a little bit like wary of, it's like the combined ones with like 7 different things in them, like the men's health all in one, blah blah blah. Like I more prefer to like target specifically. Like I'm gonna take some magnesium, I'm gonna take some vitamin D, I'm gonna take some like ashwagandha or something like that.
I guess I'm down with vitamin D. Yeah,
because I don't know how good the absorption is when. Also, that is kind of a lot. Like, I don't know, like 8 different vitamins in one. It feels like it's more for like your liver, or your kidneys, or whatever to process than, I don't know, taking 1 or 2.
Well, it's also it also is like always like 8,000% of like the daily recommendation,
no,
like
it's
on the bottle.
Huge. Yeah, that's the thing too. Is like usually the ones that are like one thing are like modulated to like not make you feel bad. The one I always had trouble with is like B12. Like B12, it makes your like pee like neon. And it makes you feel like cracked out, like you drank like 5 espressos, but like not in. I think the drug rehab thing that what's it called, Narcanon, that Scientology ran, that relied on like B12 flushes, where I think they would make you take like a bunch of B12 every day and then like run on a treadmill for like hours. And the idea was like you would sweat out all of like the toxins from like your addiction or something like that. And I know that people get like, it's always been a boutique medical treatment to get like B12 shots, which are supposed to give you like energy and stuff. But I don't know, it's like very, and I'm somebody who likes like, I will drink 5 espressos, but like for something about B12 made me feel like maybe a heart race and like feel cracked out. So I always avoid it, But like, yeah,
that
I think
was
everybody's
like in
body's
some of those like
different.
things like 5-hour energy and stuff like that. Were those vitamin B12
that has B12?
based?
Yeah. That's sometimes energy drinks would put in B12, and like for me, it's a very cracky, like kind of hyper energy that I don't like very much. But other people might be different; they might love it. But it's like a minefield out there because we don't have like this sort of like epistemic authority that we can really trust about all this stuff, because there's like there's so much money involved, and then there's like generational assumption, like institutional assumptions, kind of that have been passed down now for like a century of like Rockefeller medicine, like the Rockefeller psyop, where it's like everything has to be treated with drugs and like surgery, and like keeping people healthy is not profitable, so don't focus on it. Like like I worry that like people coming out of med school be kind of like psyoped, like depending on how they're taught some of this stuff, to like not think about, because sometimes they do have this kind of like hostility if you're asking for like alternative, like you're kind of challenging their authority, like you're challenging their status as
all
an expert.
Doctors are like that. If you like ever challenge them, you just need to like, I don't like, you just need to handle it. You didn't go to med school,
like, shut the fuck up. It's
exactly,
like, all right, yeah, you're right, I didn't go to fucking med school for 8 years, like I guess I have to shut the fuck up,
basically, like,
kind of thing.
You really have to be careful, because like if you think what's wrong with you and your doctor like doesn't agree with you, and you're like, well, could it be this, like then they're gonna a lot of the time they're gonna be like, like opposed to the idea that it could ever be that no matter what, like from now on, you know,
Right.
like just because they don't like want to be humiliated by you.
That's why getting a second opinion is like a meme, like for a very long time, is because like maybe one doctor is like stubborn or they just don't see it, and then the other you want to at least compare them off each other, you know. Yeah. Though, I mean, like even the thought of getting a second opinion, like getting an authorization to go see a second doctor after seeing the first one sounds like such a bureaucratic clusterfuck that I wouldn't even do it.
Ass. Yeah, like I mean?
Getting
old and like having to go to the doctor, like it's really it's also like, I had this moment when I was like at the doctor recently, and I had to go get like, you know, like permission and everything. I had to get it like verified and like get it, you know, covered, blah, blah, blah. Like it's like, jump through a million hoops. And then like, I get there and I'm like, you know, the guy walks in and he's like my age. And I'm like, well, you know, this guy's gonna know what he's talking about. Like, you know, he's still a doctor. And then I was like, oh, wait, like I'm a doctor. And like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about half the time. Like, you know, so it's like,
doctors are our age now.
Yeah, it's rough. And like, you're just kind of like, damn, like, you still kind of like picture like, you know, when you think of the doctor, at least when I think of the doctor, I still think of myself like being like, you know, young, going to the pediatrician, the doctor being like this wise old man. But like now it's not, just like this dude who's like, I don't know, man, like, have you tried yoga? Like, you know, it's like, dude, like.
Well, maybe more doctors will be watching Joe Rogan now and they'll be more open to riffing loosely about things. But yeah, it's like, no, just give me a cheat code of what supplements to buy and like that are backed up by actual studies. And then, you know, like you can find things sometimes that are like, oh yeah, this study like demonstrates that like this thing is mildly helpful. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll buy that, you know, but like that's not, you have to go digging for that information, which is annoying. Or, you know, half the time people are hyping studies that don't actually really suggest that, but people are saying it does, you know, it's like you're in a wilderness of mirrors.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I was saying, even in that experience of just going to the doctor, I've like run across like things that are like medical consensus, but are just like not true. For instance, like I had one doctor tell me like that prostatitis isn't a real thing. And it's just, and I kind of think, you know, like
inflammation of the prostate.
Like I don't know if it's like inflammation of the as what it means, but like, you know, like I had like some issue where I was like peeing too frequently, you know, and I was like, why am I peeing so frequently? You know, so it's kind of a scary thing. And it's like, you know, maybe
prostate.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe it has to do with my prostate, you know, it's kind of scary.
Right.
So I like went to the doctor and like, you know, that was like something that they thought like, oh, maybe it's this, like, you know, like maybe we'll put you like on an alpha blocker. But like, you know, I had a prostate exam and like they didn't seem like anything like that. And then, you know, they like did a bunch, like, you know, we went through a bunch of things, had to go back, you know, blah, blah, blah. And eventually like they were like, you know, it might just be that your pelvic floor is like too tense, you know? And like when I mentioned that to people I know, they were like, oh, like pelvic floor, isn't that something that only happens to women? And I was like,
no, it's actually, no, it's true. There is, men also have a pelvic floor.
Yeah.
Like so the Lamaze exercises.
No, yeah, everyone has a pelvic floor. Yeah. And like, that's, you know, and I'm like a very anxiety prone person. So I guess I've just been like tensing myself like constantly, you know, and like just tensing. And like when I went to the like pelvic floor, like physical therapist, she was like, yeah, prostatitis isn't a real thing. You know, like, or at least like, you know, what it has some, like maybe prostatitis is, but like there's some term for it. Like, there's like, you know, a whole Reddit community around it where it's like these like mysterious problems where you're like, you know, peeing to, like whatever. And she's like, yeah, it's just like male pelvic floor issues. And like a lot of people have them, but they don't like realize it because it's mostly something that women experience after giving birth. So like,
I remember
there's
hearing that
less,
years ago. Yeah. And that was like, oh shit. Like I never thought about that. Like, but it's like, oh yeah, like men, you should like do that. It's like good for your, you know, prostate health or whatever, to just like, you know, flex that pelvic floor every now and then while you're sitting around all day. You know.
Yeah, I think like there's,
but nobody tells you that shit. Like,
it's, you know, chronic prostatitis / chronic pelvic pain syndrome. That's the thing that's like, you know, a mysterious thing that has like no real like symptomatology or whatever. You know, again, I'm talking about medicine. I don't really know anything about it, but, and at least according to my physical therapist, like that's not something that actually like the the chronic pelvic pain syndrome, like what that usually is just like pelvic floor issues, but like men, you know, generally don't think of that, or doctors don't usually think of that being a problem for men. You know, but that was definitely what it was in my case, because like once I started like just like stretching and like doing diaphragmatic breathing, like it got like much better right away, you know. So, or well, not right away, but yeah, like definitely improved it. So whereas the other stuff didn't. So
yeah, no, it's very interesting. All right, well, should we move on to number 3 here?
Yeah, word.
All right, Zaint asked on March 20th, 2022, have there been any references to the Evil Dead series on the podcast? Rewatching the original, one of my favorites, but also, is it kind of spiritually sus? As far as its treatment of spirits and deities go, I mean. It has the tree rape scene, and then it goes into Army of Darkness and all that. Yeah, I don't know if we brought up Evil Dead
I don't
before.
think we've ever brought it up, because like I don't like love the Evil Dead movies. Like, honestly, I always felt that Army of Darkness was a little bit, to be honest, I always felt Army of Darkness was pretty cringe.
I have a very vivid memory of my my local like video store when I was a little kid had like this big ornate cardboard cutout like advertisement for Army of Darkness with like he's got like the shotgun and like the chainsaw arm and like a girl's holding on to him and there's like a million like skeletons like bleh. And I remember like that was such like a wacky image that I was like, oh wow, it was scary, intense. That was probably like 4, you know, or something. And I don't think it was like years later until I think I did watch the whole trilogy maybe like a year or 2 ago.
The first 2 movies are very different from, like, the original Evil Dead's very different, like, tonally from Army of Darkness.
Oh, and Army of Darkness is almost like a comedy, like a satire, like very tongue-in-cheek, wacky, kind of almost like this Bill and Ted vibe to it.
Yeah,
like it's very
definitely.
90s. It's very 90s. In a way
it
that
kind of has like an epic bacon sense of humor, honestly. Like
honestly, I'm with you.
Like
100%.
riding dinosaurs, like chainsaw arm, like what, you know? Like maybe if I saw it when I was younger, or like when it like originally came out, like I would have a different like attitude toward it. But I feel like I saw it like when I was already a teenager and like, or you know, late teens, and like I was just kind of like this is kind of like just cringe to me. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
There's a very like Gen X vibe to like Sam Raimi's like work.
And I know he doesn't ride a dinosaur in that movie. I'm just saying that is like the vibe of it, you know? Like
No, it is. And I mean, he's been, because I kind of, these movies pretty much like predate, they're one of these like movie series that kind of predate us and already had like a very rabid kind of cult following, I think, when we were growing up. So I'd like always hear about it. You know, it kind of felt like Rocky Horror Picture Show adjacent, kind of like theater kids or like goths.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I feel like Army of Darkness is more like nerd, like horror, like, you know, whereas
maybe you're right.
Yeah, Rocky Horror is more like goth.
As a former theater kid goth, but
I was never like a big fan of Rocky Horror, like in the way that some people were. But like, though I would say that having been in both of those groups, kind of. You know, I feel like I was more of an Army of Darkness goth, honestly, even though I didn't like that movie. But, you know, having kind of been in both those groups, they were different. I wouldn't say that. Like,
maybe you're right.
You know,
I mean, they ended up.
If they sang an Army of Darkness, is there now a musical based on it? Because I feel like that is something that could be a thing. And if it isn't,
it's kind of this
take
kind
notes,
of
Broadway.
No, there is a big epic bacon thing that I feel like eventually Sam Raimi. Well, you know,
there is an Evil Dead the musical. It's a rock musical, first performed on stage in 2003, and then moved off Broadway in 2006. There you go.
Yeah. See, the other thing about
and they
Raimi,
hailed the musical as the next Rocky Horror Show in the New York Times.
Of course, yeah,
so
there you go.
Yeah,
See,
that's
exactly.
all it's
and
missing is
also,
music, and then it
to your point, you know, he would go on to kind of hit it big by making the Spider-Man trilogy in the 2000s, right?
Yeah.
Sam Raimi, and so like his destiny perhaps always was intertwined with like comic book nerddom a little bit, and I think that's like, you know, I could just like picture Kevin Smith like going off about how freaking awesome Evil Dead is, you know, like so epic.
That's
you know
perfect
what I mean?
person.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
that kind of thing. And honestly, I just don't see it. I can see how the first one as like a midnight grindhouse, low budget.
The first
like,
one, I kind of
movie.
I see
It's
what
like,
Zaint is saying, because the first one to me I find to be like mean spirited and like kind of has like a bad vibe that upsets me.
Yeah, the first two are pretty like violent, and like he said, the tree rape is bizarre, and spiritually sus. I mean, it is a horror film, so yeah, it kind of is. I'm trying to look at what he did like before that, because this is a very low budget film, the first Evil Dead, and yeah, I mean, it's got demonic possession. It's basically like they're in a cabin and then they start to get like attacked by like demonic spirits, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all like kind of conventional, like the Necronomicon is in Army of Darkness, like, but again, that's like a fake book, and like, none of the like the depiction of the occult is like very campy, and like
I think that's what I kind of hate about it, is that it doesn't really take its subject matter seriously. It ends up pivoting.
Like horror movies actually have like good representation of the occult. It's either like very sort of generic and like, just sort of like, for instance, Hereditary. Hereditary is a movie that like if you didn't know that much, you might like, think that the like representation of the occult, like they did a little bit of like legwork, like to try to make it seem like authentic. But if you like know like even a little bit, I feel like it's very, very thin and like kind of like takes you out of the movie a little bit.
I feel that way about it, even though it's got a lot of goods. I feel like when it kind of gets to the end, it falls, it stumbles a little bit in its like occult authenticity. A little bit.
Yeah, even though,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I do think I think that's a better movie than either the Evil Dead movies. But I almost feel like the Evil Dead movies aren't making an effort to do that. It's just kind of like, it's supposed to be kind of campy.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be kind of like partially a send up, or like kind of a pastiche of like sort of pseudo like Lovecraftian kind of storylines, meets a little bit of like The Exorcist, but more grindhouse.
I do recall that like there is kind of a campy vibe to the first one, but it's more subtle. It's much more subtle than even when they jump to Grateful Dead 2, to Evil Dead 2. It starts to get in this kind of like absurdist direction where the things that are happening are just like so wacky.
Evil Dead 2 was a little bit more tonally like, a tonal bridge to Army of Darkness.
Right. And then the third one kind of goes like full like goofy camp satire thing where he's like traveling in time to like the Crusades, and then like there's just all kinds of wacky shit happening. But the first one's like got this scruffy kind of like so bad it's good kind of vibe that, can often curdle into camp after a few years. And so I think people look back on it now and they can kind of laugh at it, but it is more of like just a gritty grindhouse like horror movie where everyone like dies and stuff. And also like I was very surprised in the first one that I feel like Bruce Campbell's character Ash is like not this like swaggering goofball person in the first one.
Dude. Yeah, exactly.
He gets a little bit more like campy in the second one, and then the third one he is what I've always seen him since. And like there's just something about like people's love for the Ash character. I just like it activates my hater senses. My hater reactions of like, this guy's so freaking cool, and like he's just like, I'm a badass, and I'm just like, I'm fucking bored. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's fucking stupid. It's been resurrected now a bunch of times where, it's become kind of I guess Bruce Campbell has kind of been trapped in that role.
Yeah,
like, he's become identified with it. And, goes to like, Comic-Con conventions, and it's all just so freaking epic. But I don't like, even compared to other American horror movies from this era, like this really just doesn't like do it for me on a variety of levels. And it does kind of have a spiritually sus, like, I don't know. It's like he's just doing it because he loves like sicko movies and watching blood, and like it's like a kid playing with toys. Like, I don't know. It's not. There's no like depth to it, and he doesn't care. Like each movie, he gets less interested in there being like kind of any meaning to it.
I honestly, I feel like the sussest one is Evil Dead 3, or sorry, Army of Darkness is the most cringe. But the first one, with the tree rape and everything.
I think is tree rape in 1 or 2?
I believe tree rape is in 1. Tree rape might also be in 2. I might not remember, but I don't remember. But I know that it is in 1.
Okay. It is the
yeah. And I feel like that one, because of things like that, it just seems like misanthropic in a way that gives me a bad vibe.
Yeah, and they all kill. They all get possessed and kill each other, which is pretty black pilled.
Mm-hmm. Heckin' Stephen King was the one who sort of championed the Evil Dead.
Really?
And it seems like he kind of caused the movie to have its legacy in a way. Yeah, because he was present at the screening at the film at Cannes, and USA Today released an article of King's favorite horror films, and the author cited The Evil Dead as his 5th favorite film of the genre. The film severely affected King, who commented that while watching the film at Cannes, he was registering things I had never seen in a movie before. He became one of the film's largest supporters during the early efforts to find a distributor, eventually describing it as the most ferociously original film of the year.
I mean, is it
I don't know, dude. I don't think Stephen King has great taste, honestly.
Good point. Yeah.
I
mean, I know he's got a few bangers.
I appreciate some Stephen King writing for sure. There's definitely he's definitely tapped into something. I'm not gonna write off his talent altogether, even though he's a deeply he's a deeply cringe person. Remember when he got psyoped by that guy who pretended to be Zelensky and was saying genocidal remarks? Do you remember that?
I don't think I remember.
I'm almost certain this happened to Stephen King. I hope I'm not misrepresenting him. Hold on, fake Zelensky. Yeah, Stephen King targeted by
Twitter,
Russian pranksters posing as no. He did it a video call. During the video call, the pranksters were just talking about how evil Russians are and how we need to kill them all or something, and how great Bandera is and hail him and stuff like that. And Stephen King was like, yes, I agree, he's a great man or whatever.
Oh my God. Oh my God, that's wild.
Right, he asked King's opinion of Bandera. You can always find things about people to pull them down, King responded. Washington and Jefferson were slave owners. That doesn't mean they didn't do any good things for the United States of America. There are always people who have flaws. We're human, There are things we do that are bad choices, and there are things we do that are great choices. So on the whole, I think Bandera was a great man, and you're a great man, and Viva Ukraine.
Oh my God. Jeez.
So there you go. Yeah, but I'm not gonna say that it isn't kind of interesting. Although it is a little bit. There's weird shit in there too. It's interesting. It's getting at something, but there's a weird shit in there. Pet Sematary, all of his books, I don't know, he's sus too, honestly. But I'm not gonna say he's not talented, or that he doesn't know how to write
prolific.
Disturbing books.
Right, he's doing the little modern Edgar Allan Poe thing.
Yeah, that's a good comparison, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but then he does have Pet Cemetery. I don't know. He just has wacky ones, and then there's ones that are a little more elevated.
Well, Pet Cemetery is called that, but it's not really
I'm
about
sorry.
just
it was
pets.
Actually a deep one. I'm sorry, I never saw it or read
it
or anything. Yeah. I'm just thinking about Cujo. I don't know, ones that are about a dog that's a killer. It's okay.
Yeah.
Is this a complicated? Is this the complex literature? I don't know.
I mean, I'm not gonna say that Stephen King's books are great literature. They're ultimately genre fiction, and some of them are kind of messed up in a way where I don't necessarily think the values are great. Some of them are okay, but yeah, I mean, whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's things like Trucks. Trucks is a good example of there's nothing to this, but it is a little bit spooky. What if Trucks did come to life?
I mean, no, fair enough. Yeah, that taps into something deep about our car culture.
There's a really scary image in Trucks of the trucks paving all of America's wilderness into a perfect flat concrete world.
No,
for truck. Yeah.
Just for trucks.
Yeah. Hold on.
It actually is.
Yeah.
He was spitting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this. That Sam Raimi, I think, with the help of Stephen King brought the sequel, Evil Dead 2, to the attention of producer Dino De Laurentiis, who I think signed Sam Raimi to like a multiple picture deal, I believe. I think I read that. After Evil Dead 1. De Laurentiis, very sus individual. Yeah, I forget, like the second one is like a weird like redo of the first one, but he's like just with his girlfriend, right?
Yeah, and it's a little bit more, it's like a remake, but it's a little bit more kind of campy.
Yeah, it's more campy.
You know what Sam Raimi movie I did like, I mean, I only saw it once, but I remember liking it when it came out, was Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah. Was that a remake or was that original?
I believe it was original.
I did not, I never saw it.
Basically, like, she chooses not to extend a witch's mortgage. She's like a, she's a loan officer in a bank.
Okay.
The main character, who's played by Alison Lohman.
Alison Lohman. I don't know what happened to her.
Yeah. I
remember the poster though. I remember the poster of her being dragged to hell.
Yeah, and she does. Oh well, spoiler alert! But she gets dragged to hell in the movie.
In a bucket.
But most of the movie does not take place in hell, and it's not really like about like being dragged to hell so much. It's like about her. She gets cursed, and it's like in 3 days you're gonna get dragged to hell for not extending my mortgage.
Wow.
By like an old like Roma sorceress. And she tries to like prevent this from happening, but she has to go through all these. Yeah, it's a pretty good movie. I liked
it was interpreted as being a commentary on the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession, but it was a coincidence because he made it before all that happened.
Yeah, quite prescient.
Yeah, one of those things. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to say like, he's sus or whatever. I guess I
don't really know anything about Sam Raimi. I just like that movie. Like, that's it. I mean, on the other hand, I haven't seen Oz the Great and Powerful, but I'm 100% confident that it sucks.
It probably does. Is that the newer Oz movie?
It's the one with James Franco as the Wizard of Oz.
Oh my God. Yeah, that might be funny. Probably a weird movie, honestly. Probably very weird. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it just, the Evil Dead thing specifically was never my vibe. Even when I guess I only actually watched it like a year or two ago, but it didn't
that's not maybe my favorite type of horror movie at all.
No, just the jokey, like campy blood and guts, like haha, like so we can. It's like, every movie you go to now, like every revival screening in LA, no matter like how fucked up the movie is, everyone just laughs now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I've been hearing that on Twitter. I mean, I don't mind like campy movies. Like, I know it kind of got like, shat on like afterwards. And like, again, it was not like a transcendent and great movie, but I thought that Late Night with the Devil was pleasant and enjoyable. I do agree with like the critiques people have made that like it didn't keep the conceit the whole way through, which is kind of like a little bit like disappointing or kind of like takes you out of it a little bit. But I still thought that was a perfectly pleasant movie that was kind of in that thing where it's mostly like funny. And it's not really.
Sometimes
like,
sometimes it's appropriate. Yeah, it's just fun. Everything is like Evil Deadified to just be like, haha, like funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very differently about like Army of Darkness, which I'm like, all right, whatever. I mean, like, yeah. And I think also the like you said, the cultural complex around it like makes it worse. But yeah.
Yeah. I don't know quite what it is about like the nerdy obsession with like Evil Dead being the most freaking bacon movie of all time. Like, it comes off to me just like I don't know, like a goofy grindhouse movie, and then everything else is like trying to be kind of shitty on purpose. Like, it's doing the deliberate camp, like Turbo Camp or something like that. And then you're like, but it loses some of its magic when it's so intentional. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like some of the magic of camp, things like The Room.
Movies that are bad on purpose are like the worst movies.
Right.
Like The Room is hilarious. I still maintain like the first time like watching The Room, it's like, so funny. Like, I mean, and not every bad movie is as funny as that. But there's no movie that is bad on purpose has a chance of being as funny as that. Like, those are the most unbearable movies, or like movies that are bad on purpose. like, or trying to be like a bad movie. Like, what if a bad movie was made? Like, that's the worst thing to watch.
Yeah, that's why I could never get with like the Bruce Campbell shtick from like kind of Evil Dead 2 onward of just being like this like Duke Nukem like cartoon character guy who's just like, yeah, smoking. Ugh. Like, I don't know, it's just like annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all.
This is the quote I was thinking of from Stephen King's Trucks, which, like, you know, it's a very dumb concept, which is like for some random reason, like trucks and like not cars, but like only trucks like come to life. And like, you know, so it's a kind of a stupid concept, but this ending is chilling. Like
Apex Predator.
Yeah. We could run, maybe. It would be easy to make the drainage ditch now, the way they're stacked up. Run through the fields, through the marshy places where the trucks would bog down like mastodons and go back to the caves. Drawing pictures in charcoal. This is the moon god. This is a tree. This is a Mac semi overwhelming a hunter. Not even that. So much of the world is paved now. Even the playgrounds are paved. And for the fields and marshes and deep woods, there are tanks, half-tracks, flatbeds equipped with lasers, masers, heat-seeking radar. And little by little, they can make it into the world they want. I can see great convoys of trucks filling the Okefenokee swamp with sand, and bulldozers ripping through the national parks and wildlands, grading the earth flat, stamping it into one great flat plain, and then the hot top trucks arriving. But they're machines. No matter what's happened to them, what mass consciousness they've given them, they can't reproduce. In 50 or 60 years, they'll be rusting hulks, with all the menace gone to them, moveless carcasses for free men to stone and spit at. And if I close my eyes, I can see the production lines in Detroit and Dearborn and Youngstown and Mackinac, new trucks being put together by blue collars who no longer even punch a clock, but only drop and are replaced. There you go.
Like slave, like, oh, okay.
Yeah, people enslaved by trucks to like constantly
enslaved by trucks to build more trucks.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
No, oh my God. That's like the first, it's like a Terminator vibe, but with trucks.
Yeah. But the movie he made out of this, Maximum Overdrive, is famously bad.
That's what it was called, Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, that was the movie. That was
That's
based on
different
a short
than
story,
the...
which was simply called Trucks.
Okay, yeah, I kind of like Trucks.
Yeah.
Trucks is
yeah,
better.
It's better. Yeah.
It's haunting. All right, well, yeah. Anyways,
yeah, and that was Stephen King's only directorial effort, actually, was Maximum Overdrive.
He directed it.
And didn't he kill someone on the set of Maximum Overdrive? Or, like, he was, like, an awful director who, like, was reckless, and there was, like, a lawsuit or something. Yeah. At a fan screening in 2021, Jock Brandis, the film's gaffer, told the audience that the King rode a motorcycle from Maine to Wilmington so he could ride alongside semi-trucks on the highway. He wanted to get a better feel for how terrifying big rigs could be when in close proximity, to better know their sounds and movements. Yeah. While shooting the scene, this is the part. When shooting a scene when a lawnmower comes alive in a residential neighborhood, Nanuzzi, I guess who is, you know, the guy who ended up suing them, was struck in the right eye, his shooting eye, by a large splinter of wood that had become lodged in the blade. According to camera assistant Sylvia Giulietti, we were shooting a scene where a lawnmower, the machine that cut the grass, was following a boy to kill him. And we put the camera on the ground with a piece of wood beneath, to wedge, okay? And I remember that Armando Nanuzzi asked Stephen King, can we take out the blades? But Stephen King said, no, I like to see them. Armando said, but we don't see them in the shot. But Stephen King said, no, better that you let it. The special effects department had also suggested removing the blade for safety reasons, but King continued to insist that it remain, so the scene could appear more lifelike. And yeah, I guess that blade flew out and struck him in the eye, the cameraman in the eye, and
Jesus.
Yeah, in the eye that he used to shoot. So he believed he would never be considered for big budget projects again because they didn't want a cameraman with no depth perception. So he had to move back to Italy where he worked until his retirement. Yeah. So the case was settled. Yeah.
Damn, it's like a Rust situation.
Yeah. So what the fuck, Stephen King? Very irresponsible. You always gotta like be safe. Like, I don't know why people do this shit. You know, like why? Like it's so reckless. It reminds me of
a lot
like,
of directors, John Landis got somebody killed on set.
Exactly.
In this period, there was a lot of dangerous.
No, I've seen people do that all the time, where they're like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. Like, you can just like stand up on this table that isn't secured. Like, even if you're like pregnant or whatever. Like, it's insane. Yeah, but like for nothing, just for a movie." It's one of those like twisted things,
Well,
like,
it's like the director is cult leader is like, you have to do
fake
this for the
life
shot.
over matters over real life,
Exactly.
Show must go on. Anyway, sorry, I don't know where to play. But
anyways, all right, yeah, because that's all we know about Stephen King, or not. Sorry, about Sam Raimi and the Evil Dead.
He was relevant because he was the one who caused the Evil Dead to be the phenomenon that it was through his endorsement.
Yes,
as
exactly.
a horror aficionado.
That's right.
Hi, my name is Stephen King. I've written several motion pictures, but I want to tell you about a movie called Maximum Overdrive, which is the first one I've directed. Wow.
What in the dickens is going on around here?
A lot of people have directed Stephen King novels and stories. And I finally decided if you want something done right, you ought to do it yourself.
Who was driving it? I don't know.
Curtis! It's coming after us!
It was my first picture as a director. And you know something? I sort of enjoyed it. I just wanted someone to do Stephen King right.
You want a war? You got one. I just want to get the hell out of here.
So come and spend some time with me and my friends at the Dixie Boy. Spend some time in the dark.
Please don't let us be in the dark.
Help me.
I'm gonna scare the hell out of you. And that's a promise.
You're going to get us in an awful lot of trouble, man. We already in trouble.
Maximum terror.
Jesus coming and he is.
Maximum King.
Maybe tomorrow will be our world again.
Dino De Laurentiis presents Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive.
D-Dog asks on 3/21/2022. On the recent Outwater Ukraine episode, interesting. Yeah, I almost was like, oh, the one we just did, but no, this is the original one. Dimitri mentioned that we're in a much later stage of baked-in media self-manipulation that he called the grandchild of Mockingbird. Do you guys think it's useful to consider that these really sadistic internet phenomena like blood over intent, gore sites, and the Nth Room scandal might be the grandchild of MK? It stands out to me that we've now heard a couple of stories involving small, dedicated quote-unquote cults that ritualize extreme behavior, often as a process of, quote, new guys proving themselves to whoever is on the other side of the screen. Whether or not they're organic, I worry that these creepy internet subplots could represent a wider social seeding of the MK trauma-inflicting model. Thanks for your thoughts. God bless. I almost feel like, kind of relative to what you were saying before a little bit when we were talking about Shinrikyo, that like the MK Ultra like techniques, like MK Ultra itself, is sort of an investigation into the kind of phenomenon that has pre-existed MK Ultra, and the things that D-Dog mentions are also instantiations of. That's what I would say, more so than like. And I think that, MK Ultra has an impact and is significant, and you can definitely trace the relationships between the actual MK Ultra program and also like the elements of the MK Ultra program that certainly exist that we don't like know as much about as MK Ultra itself, or the descendants of it, like in the sort of underground like counterculture and like the cult milieu in the United States. But I also think that milieu definitely existed before MK Ultra itself. And like
it wasn't as if these like techniques, the things we call MK Ultra, were completely undiscovered by humanity before MK Ultra. Like in some cases, they were utilizing sort of new technologies, whether that's like electroshock therapy or like LSD to sort of see, I wonder if this works. But I think like the underlying like principles of human manipulation obviously predate MK Ultra, and you can almost look at like MK Ultra as like this kind of great like Sputnik era effort to compile as much information about all forms of like mind control that have existed throughout the world, and also ways to like operationalize them and kind of like build new techniques, like new streamlined techniques for using it as a kind of like a weapon in the Cold War.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, you could at least call it a family member of MK Ultra in that way, for sure. I don't know if like there's a direct relationship of descent as implied by grandchild, but I don't know, maybe that's semantic.
I think in some cases there could be a kind of like operational agenda with some of these like weird group. I mean, you look at like Atomwaffen was kind of an example of a kind of online cult, neo-Nazi Satanist cult like this that was sort of using a lot of literature from Order of Nine Angles and a lot of their kind of like theology. That guy had ties to sort of like Gladio networks and weird kind of deep political shit. David Myatt, of course. So in that sense, you could see a grandchild of like Gladio Satanist neo-Nazi groups in the 80s that were like trying to out Michael Aquino and come up with just ultimate sicko like Nazi Satanist ideologies and stuff. Like that stuff is floated around the internet, whether or not it's being like directly funneled to like new younger groups that are using it to build cults, like, or whether they're just stumbling upon it because it's been created and it's floating around out there. So inevitably somebody's going to like pick up this tool maybe and try to use it. But then, you can get into the whole thing about like had the FBI infiltrated Atomwaffen? It's hard to believe they just totally leave them alone.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them ended up going to prison.
Did. Yeah.
So like there's also that kind of just law enforcement / like COINTELPRO, like state surveillance of these types of groups. And are some groups allowed to just run around? And remember the kid who like went and shot up, he went and specifically targeted black people at like a supermarket in Buffalo. And remember they were talking about, this was like a couple years ago, and they were talking about how for a little while they were talking about how he had been like talking to some ex-military like or ex like security services type guy in like a private Discord server or whatever. And then that was all just kind of like memory hold and like never brought up again. I don't think that guy was arrested. And like, even if, we don't know exactly what that was, but to me, that's like a very easy example to get people to understand how that type of like MK Gladio thing could happen, where you kind of groom somebody online and then, have to like get them to prove themselves to you by doing various things and kind of develop like a psychological, get your hooks into them. And it is possible, not saying, it's easy to do to everybody, but I think we all just ambiently know that like it could be done under the right circumstances.
It's 100% done, and it's not like necessarily like, for instance, like that definitely happens like to, and has happened many times to Muslims. Like whether they actually ended up like, committing a terrorist attack, like a lot of Muslims were like entrapped, into like being are sort of led into some kind of like terrorist plot in order so they could say that they arrested someone. Right. And this kind of relates to, what we were talking about a little bit before in terms of the, recent like quote unquote ISIS attack that happened, or, the Islamic terrorist attack, and how that a genre of terrorism kind of like disappeared from the headlines for like a pretty long time, only to like resurge at, what seems like, and again, we talked about how, maybe this is just the sort of organic nature of the discourse cycle or the sort of attention cycle. But on the other hand, like it definitely is true that in the intervening period, a big focus was like right-wing terrorism. Right. And things like Atomwaffen that sort of combined like right-wing sort of fascism with like Order of Nine Angles esotericism. I mean, I think there were factions within it where there was sort of tension over the issue of Satanism and that type of thing. But so I definitely would imagine that there are like some groups like that may just be completely like operated by
honeypots.
Yeah, exactly.
Honeypots.
Yeah.
It totally could be. It's totally true that like they kind of got to test this out on the Muslim population because like the early 2000s was when everyone was kind of getting on the internet. And the idea of targeting somebody solely online to like recruit them for something, kind of like, cyber recruitment of spies and assets and even like, operatives to do like attacks and things. There was kind of a free reign to do that in the 2000s and even the 2010s against, anybody that was Muslim and could be kind of tied to like an Al-Qaeda thing. But then it is interesting that even by like the official story, by their own admission, with the rise of these like lone wolf, kind of starting with like the Boston bombing, which is incredibly sus. And I think we will have to, we'll do a great deep dive, maybe this year. But starting with that, but then like through these like subsequent attacks, particularly the American ones, tended to have people that were like quote unquote radicalized online by ISIS. And like that's the official story, is that so the government's admitting that this is like a totally doable thing that can happen. They're just saying that it's like, oh, ISIS is off in like Syria doing that to like people on the internet. When I mean, maybe, but also, even though they did seem to be very internet savvy,
well, a lot of people who were ISIS supporters, again, like, it's kind of a distortion of the truth, sort of implying that, there's like sort of a call center or like a troll farm based in like the caliphate territory or whatever, when really what it is like English speaking like Muslims in the West who like are sympathetic to ISIS, who maybe could radicalize you.
But also could be any number of people.
Exactly.
You don't know who's on the other end of that screen.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
like it could be a Fed. It could be a server, a bot farm.
And in some
Saudi
cases,
Arabia.
it 100% certainly is. Like Shamima Begum, that famous story, right? Like it turned out that she was like literally trafficked to Syria by like someone who was like a British asset or an American asset. I don't quite remember.
Right.
But like,
just like the Ariana bomber was like had MI6 affiliations.
Like a lot of these people who were like facilitating the movement of like foreign fighters into Syria to fight for ISIS, like were actually, like assets of like either the US or the UK. Or like NATO powers, certainly Turkey, like, as we all know very well at this point, Turkey is,
the whole NATO gang was like, was kind of, had their fingerprints all over it. So I think it's one of the best examples of a kind of like modern cyber gladio, like / MK grooming operation to get like extreme or I don't know, gullible, extreme, whatever people, like kind of like identifying them and then grooming them to, for example, like go to Syria, right? And what's interesting is that, this is mostly happening, I think, in the United States. It was not happening where like somebody would meet somebody at their local mosque or at their local heckin' anarchist meeting, maybe, and establish a real face-to-face relationship and get recruited that way, which is probably, that's how it happened probably during the Spanish Civil War and every other conflict before the internet, is like you probably wouldn't just like see a thing in a magazine and like go off to a foreign country without communicating with anybody. Like there were just, barriers to it, but now you can do it all online, which is so cloaked in ambiguity and so deniable that you have no idea who's running like this Facebook group or like this, WhatsApp chat or this Telegram channel. Like you don't know. It could be government operatives like running a lot of them, and then you get somebody, it's kind of we've seen it as the FBI's MO to kind of like entrap people and even goad them into doing a bad thing. And so, in the government's view, joining ISIS is a bad thing. But at the same time, like they could have multiple objectives for doing that. Maybe that's like, that's how they can generate terrorism cases, is by like tricking somebody to go and join ISIS and then like catching them. Or maybe they want assets. They want assets to go into ISIS, and then they like have a line of communication to somebody inside ISIS. Like, there's a bunch of different reasons they could do it secretly.
Totally. There's many, I mean, and also like ISIS is, or like Islamic extremism broadly, but particularly like, you know, because ISIS really is like a very decentralized thing. You know, it's not really like an organization with like a command structure as much as like, you know, that was the idea of it that helped to sort of motivate interest in it. Like, did that really exist functionally? Maybe for a very, very brief flash of time, you know, and like after that, like it really started to degenerate like pretty quickly.
It's all kind of murky of like who was al-Baghdadi really like, you know, did he have a real bureaucracy that was like really, you know, they seemed to had a lot of resources and were doing a lot of stuff for a couple of years, but at the same time it was very stochastic.
There were like officers. I mean, just look at Abu Muhammad Gilani himself, right? He was supposed to be like in the chain of command of ISIS, but like he was like, no, like, you know, I'm not gonna listen to what you're, you know, saying. I'm gonna go try to set up my own thing, which like, you know, wasn't.
It was probably more of a warlord, a kind of like a warlord alliance where you probably had individual commanders that sort of pledged
exactly.
To
That's exactly what it was. Exactly what it
of
was,
ISIS, but then kind of do their own thing. Generally, be left to like kind of lose a little bit like Ukraine too, where I mean, like they have a little more of a structure, but still, from you know what we hear about it, like there's kind of like these loose, like not very well coordinated units all just kind of going around fighting and stuff. So it's like not clear like where, I mean, I remember reading years ago, I'd like to go back and like revisit this aspect. It really just dropped into the bucket and vanished, but there was like I don't know, it was like New Yorker or some big magazine profile about like the chief of like propaganda and video production for ISIS being like an American guy, like who's, I think, I feel like maybe he grew up in Texas or maybe was living in Boston for a while, but ended up like going over there. And maybe he had like studied film at like Boston University or something. It was something weird like that, where he literally did have like a film school background. And then he went and like joined ISIS and was like, you know, it was like Abu Muhammad al-Amriki or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And like, I don't know what the fuck happened to him. Like, did he die? I think maybe he might have died in a drone strike or something. But like, that never gets talked about. That they never made hay out of that. That like, look, there's an American that's like somehow wormed his way up to like a pretty high, like the chief of propaganda, and is by all accounts doing a pretty good job of it. You got to say, right?
Yeah.
Like, this kid, like one of the unsung auteurs of the 2010s. I mean, Flames of War, that was not a middling video, right? The sheets and everything. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I know it's it's a dark thing. They are snuff films,
speaking,
but
you know, that definitely was like a big strength of
visual strength.
That definitely was a big strength of ISIS, was like their propaganda, you know, and I think there's many aspects to that. But yeah, certainly, like, you know, there's many reasons why. And again, like my larger point is that like it's not really something where you can be like, oh, we only want ISIS to be a phenomenon in China, you know, like you can definitely see why ISIS would be a great thing for the United States and China, and that's something
they just pop up everywhere where they're most useful to us. Isn't that funny, right? Like they pop up all over Africa, and then they pop up in Iran, they pop up in Afghanistan to challenge the Taliban. Like they're just always there, and it's like, and at this point, especially for those international groupings, there might be some mercenaries that kind of like have spanned several conflict zones, but like this really is kind of like a franchise thing of like there's a local group that adopted the black flag and like they're ISIS now, but like they're not getting direct orders from ISIS headquarters, like anything like that. It's like an affiliate thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's at least my impression of it. And then they're usually fighting for more like parochial, like over more parochial, like localized issues that often align with like US and NATO.
It definitely, I would say, is like not a coincidence. For instance, like when, you know, people were like, oh, look at all these foreign fighters in Syria who like are Uyghurs, you know, that proves that like these are mercs who are like working for the US. Like maybe not like directly. However, there certainly is a reason why like there is like there are Islamic extremist groups and like an ISIS presence in Xinjiang, China, like why there is like ISIS. And there also is definitely a reason, which I wouldn't necessarily attribute to any kind of like internal rationale, why the focus of those groups has been Syria. and not like leaving Israel aside. Like I get why, like, you know, they're not about to go to war. Like it almost in a way makes sense, but like there's a lot of other places. But it's always you could go fight Saudi. You could go, you know,
it's always interesting who they won't target on. It's like we just have to go do a jihad. We have to do it. Like throw all caution to the wind. I don't care if we're traveling from Xinjiang all the way to Syria. But then it's like, okay, not Saudi Arabia, not Israel, not the West, like just Syria. It's like, it's a little curious. It's like, okay, like you're going to go balls out and because that was kind of the vibe in the 80s. It was like Afghanistan was the jihad hotspot, like the magnet for anybody that wanted to fight, like participate in like a holy war and defend Islam could go to Afghanistan. And like Syria is like
Bosnia was
another one where both you know Iran and Osama bin Laden ended up being involved in that, and but like Syria, because it's also like you know you have the Shia and Alawite like faction that is like in power in Syria. It's not like non-Muslims are like attacking Muslims. It's like an intra-Muslim civil war, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like
people in ISIS don't see it that way. First of all, like Alawites, like sometimes Alawites don't even see themselves as being Muslims. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do.
All of that. I know all that. You know, but nonetheless, it's different than the godless communist Russians coming in, right? Like it's a little more fuzzy.
Well, that's the thing, like, which I don't think is 100% a coincidence either. But like in the like beliefs of ISIS, like a Shia is worse than a Jew because they are like
Rafida,
corrupting
whatever, right?
Rafida, like, but you know that's a derogatory term, but like they are like corrupting
our word,
Islam from within, you know.
No, it's a messy thing. You know what? In the time we have left, I think let's jump to this next question because it's kind of related. I think, it'll pivot the conversation in an interesting direction. Let's see. I'm reading this one, right? Yeah. So Enoch asked, I'm locally involved in groups of Marxists, leftists, etc., and a lot of them are straight up anti-conspiracy people out of hand. What the fuck is up with that? I concur. What the fuck is up with that? But interesting. After everything we've just been talking about, it's funny to have like a so-called like socialist walk in and go, actually that you sound like a conspiracy theorist. You know, it's actually, I think I said before we were recording, it is wild in 2025 that Marxists would be a group that would react that way to like talk of quote unquote conspiracies. Like it seems
kind
crazy
of,
to me.
But it's also like not.
And yet there is a phenomenon, I think, that is being accurately described here by Enoch, where there still are some people holding out, and like
people who are self-identified Marxists like tend to be. It's kind of like ironic, and this is not unilaterally the case, but I would say that like it's a somewhat bourgeois phenomenon to be like a self-identified Marxist in the United States. It just is. Like I don't think that's like can be contested. Like, you know, in terms of proportional representation, I'm not saying there are people who don't fit that description, but and so
I know what you or socialist. I think maybe doubly so for there's a kind of academic
if you're
thing
like
to Marxist,
it's also true. It's doubly true if like you have an opinion about like you are a socialist, but like you're anti-Marx, like, you know, you have like opinions on like struggles within, you know, like Marxism. Like that is like I think very niche phenomenon.
Right. You're a Frankfurt School person, you're a Trot,
exactly.
You're a social democrat, you're a Bernie, like, you know, DSA person, or a lot of DSA, not all DSA, but a lot of DSA people, I think fit this bill. And
and my point in saying that is that like those people from that background sometimes like, you know, have more of an investment in like institutions of knowledge production, you know, like for instance, like to understand like Marxist theory and like to have an attachment to these like political philosophies and ideas and like the critique of capitalism, a lot of the time that like, as we talked about before, that like kind of bespeaks a like higher education, you know, that means like at least an undergraduate education. So, which like a lot of people have, but like still, the more passionate about it, like the more, maybe you study the political science. I don't know, maybe you study the humanities, something like
those tend to be the people that are would call themselves Marxists. I think these days, like probably work in like academia, media. Sometimes
so I
law,
think that
but like the professions.
So there's like kind of an instilled attachment to like legitimate or sort of like legitimate sources of like authority and of knowledge, right? Like we've talked about a million times, like millions of times. I feel like the word conspiracy, like in the sort of like popular media discourse, like in the legacy media, it basically just means like something that's stupid and wrong.
Right.
It doesn't mean like it doesn't mean like a plan like devised in secret among a group to accomplish some kind of like usually illegal aim or whatever the like actual definition of conspiracy is. If you go to the dictionary, it means like a crazy, not true belief. So
a delusional, a delusional story that is false that you believe like is the real story of a situation, which the consensus is in on this thing and can't be questioned. Yeah, I mean, we definitely talked about it a lot, how poison of a term it is, and I mean, I think also Enoch is specifically talking about being involved in groups, of like people that meet in real life and quote unquote organize, right? And it kind of sucks because I feel like that's especially where you don't want to be like knee-jerk anti-conspiracy when you think about like labor struggles, right? I feel like you go back like 60 years to when American unions were relatively more powerful, and they had some sus qualities of their own, but I feel like, you talk to a bunch of people that are involved in like union politics and stuff like that. There's constant allegations. Even today, like union people, they're not super afraid to be like the bosses are conspiring. They met behind our backs to like do this and that. And you know what I mean? Like they're they're in bad faith of like you're being sus, like you're lying, like that kind of thing. And that's just like actually a very it happens to be true in many cases, and it's like constitutive of how like capitalism functions is with like conspiracies, like sort of the house edge of capitalists is that they get to like preemptively conspire all the time amongst themselves, and they have a lot of capital to deploy and other social levers of influence to like basically ram their agenda through, often while pretending to be doing something else, which is like definitionally conspiratorial behavior.
I can only assume that what Enoch is describing is like a version of like the Carl Oglesby phenomenon where like people are willing, like, because you're right. Like I'm just thinking of like when we organized like the graduate student union, like back when I was in grad school, and some of the people like in that group like may very well have been writing their dissertations on like the dangers of conspiracy theories, but like they were not like about to suggest, like, they were very aware of like the conspiracies by like the administration, like they were very alert to the possibility of like conspiracies against the union, within like the scope of the university, so it's the thing of like, at your job, like in your field, like, or,
that's what Oglesby said. You can also, you can see how your boss would conspire, but then somehow when it gets up to the presidential or the corporate CEO level, it's like unthinkable. What? Like that you never keep that secret, like, and all this bullshit. Yeah, no, it's true.
So I can only assume that when he says they're anti-conspiracy, it must be that like they don't believe that like JFK, they believe like the lone gunman theory of the JFK or something like that, or like. Yeah, so some comparable thing is,
or like Chomsky. They don't see like it doesn't really matter actually. Like if you do enough structural analysis, it actually doesn't matter. Like there's the structure heads, the structure cells that are which is of course is not to like discount like the structural analysis that I feel like you do kind of need to like navigate figuring out how the world works.
I mean,
how
like,
history functions, but. Like there are discrete events that aren't just like broad structural forces that happen. Like the rubber hits the road. The capital moves like through people. Like it's it doesn't just like run around like on even though it does have a spectral like character. Not a faceless mob. There are faces, but of course Contra. Luigi, like you could shoot some of those faces, but then like the structural system will just like sprout another one in its place So, it does act through people, and at the same time, you can't like shoot your way out of it or punish the bad guys catch the bad guy. Or kind of it's almost like
you can't bring the system of capitalism or even like the health insurance industry, private healthcare industry crashing down by shooting one guy. However, and I'm not saying that you should do that because the subliminal jihad is purely nonviolent struggle through chat and contemplation.
Exactly.
However, like if one, and again, I'm not saying anyone should do this like seriously. However, like if you were to kill a bunch of people, it might do something.
Well,
like
but then we get into the dialectical clapback of that, which would then be like the increasing like private militarization even further of the propertied class, the super rich. Basically, they would withdraw from plebeian society even more and.
I agree. There is a dialectic
guys around them at all
there
times.
Is a dialectic, but I think that to say that like these things don't there's no like amount of removing. I'm not saying people should be removed. I'm just saying like if they were to stop or desist, if they all had like a moral crisis and they changed their minds or whatever, and were like, I am going to. They themselves got one-shotted and went.
If they get one-shotted,
to go, not by a gun, but by ayahuasca, and went to go
that's
live.
Happening too in corporate America now. It's in full swing now. The one-shotification of America's CEOs. I've been reading a lot of articles about it. Even the notion of one-shotting itself is kind of.
I'm just saying there's a balance to be struck from the idea that like. Capital just operates like literally by like some kind of spectral force totally independent of human beings, like as if institutions aren't comprised of human beings, like it's this kind of thing of like it's anti-human, it's anti like the whole like even like in our like political analysis of capitalism, like the like meaning and like the importance of like humanity is like being like a face, like like there needs to be like you're right, like getting like it's not just so simple as like it's all comes down to the big bad boss man, and like once we get rid of this one guy or like anybody like the president of the United States, like there's gonna be another one who's equally bad. If you get rid of like Bibi Netanyahu, like who's gonna replace him? Someone who's like as bad or worse, right? But like at a certain point there's groups of people who do have a significant impact in terms of shaping the character of institutions and of these forces in society.
There are vanguards. Of these institutions, and like
if Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, if those people were raptured by the AI god tomorrow, like that would make a difference.
Well, besides from proving the AI god's real, yes, it would make a difference. Their absence would make a difference. If they shot off on a rocket,
let's say they would be dragged. They would be drag me to hell.
If they were dragged to hell tomorrow, just like totally cosmically, like not.
Again, no one should ever do this or ever do anything violent. Ever.
Well, they're in charge of the surveillance state now, so but I mean, at the same time, it's a tricky thing, like, because at the same time, there are minions below them that would rise up to like take their place. Maybe they wouldn't be as competent. At the same time, I don't know. But there's something about just the natural
or as insane, like they might not be like in the like transhumanist, like
right.
Like
well, I mean, one thing I saw that was like, this isn't like shooting a CEO, but one thing I saw that was a little bit optimistic, and I think if people want to channel their righteous anger, not endorsing, property is totally awesome and sacred, but there had been some AI company had put up like a billboard at a bus stop in San Francisco downtown that was, I forget what it was called, like Gemini or some shit, but it was like Gemini doesn't complain about work-life balance, and it had like a picture of like a female AI like chatbot, and it's like download Gemini for like your work optimization AI. So it's basically like joking about how like AI is going to replace all workers because they don't like complain about their work-life balance, and they just like they're just computers and they work. And this is a side-by-side pic of like that got put up, and the next day like somebody just fucking smashed it and like tore it to pieces.
Wow.
Like, get right at the bus stop.
Nice.
Of just like, I mean, like at a certain point, people are going to get mad. And, you know, when you're talking about property of these assholes and them trying to like celebrate, I don't know, the elimination of like millions of jobs and like the further immiseration of everybody for this stupid AI God obsession that they have, you know, like some Luddite shit might happen, you know, and we've been here before in American history, which is interesting. I would like to kind of get into the Molly Maguires this year because I feel like we're kind of in that
Maybe
era.
we will, yeah.
About, you know, quote unquote labor terrorism in the Gilded Age and how we never really dwell as Americans on just how fucking like lit and radical and violent like the United States was during that period. Like you notice they don't make movies about it. They're always like Westerns. I mean, easier to make, whatever. But always these individualist tales about the frontier. But we never talk about like what was happening in the slaughterhouses of Chicago and the rail yards in Philadelphia and, you know, the garment factories in Massachusetts and riots in Pinkertons and like massive amounts of conspiracies on both sides, both the bosses and with labor. And like labor from time to time, like, you know, the class war became just like straight up people shooting each other, you know, in the United States, like at various points. And we kind of been like a little bit, I don't know, shielded from that, from kind of the New Deal period on even into this neoliberal era where, I don't know, I think they sort of manufactured a new type of citizen, a new type of consumer. The culture shifted in a way where everyone like thinks of themselves like a small business person now or something like that, or like an individual cowboy, entrepreneur, whatever. And like a lot of jobs and labor, because of the kind of information economy, like they're more abstracted, compartmentalized, like not as easy to readily organize as like a factory shop floor, right?
True.
You know, you have like Amazon drivers who are like always alone on their shifts, like driving around peeing into bottles. And things like Uber and Lyft, where you're like completely alienated from like your fellow workers and interact with this like faceless app that just determines how much you get paid and all these other fucking things that you have no control or input over. And so much has been mystified and obscured. And I feel like AI is like an attempt to like double down on the mystification of like labor itself and like also just abolish like a lot of the middle range labor that kind of built Silicon Valley and AI, like all these like programming jobs and things like that, and just office jobs in general. Like people thought that, oh, well, you know, automation will advance, but like, you know, if I know how to do office things like on a computer, if I know how to have a laptop job, like I'll be fine. Now it's like, nope, like ChatGPT can code. Like we just need one coder left to like double check it. But like, even though AI is stupid, it makes tons of mistakes. They're going to try to force it on like everything they can as a cost saving mechanism with like, it seems like no regard for the social, like economic consequences of people who will be driven out of work by that. And so people are, you know, it might get to a point where like, you're not just going to let people aren't just going to accept being thrown into like total poverty if it accelerates in that direction, you know, and also like ecological disaster and like breakdown of kind of like basic government like benefits and the perception that our taxes go to like basically fund like genocides and weapons and like we have an oligarchy. As Joe Brandon warned us on his way out, there's an oligarchy in America. I mean, quite a fucking person to tell us that.
Techno-industrial complex, is that what he called it, right?
The tech industrial complex, yeah. Yeah, he tried to do a little Eisenhower thing.
Yeah,
there.
He did.
But you know, I mean, despite the messenger,
he's not wrong.
No, he's not wrong.
Yeah, like in a way, like, you know, if you want to criticize it, it's like a little bit too obvious. But also, this is kind of in terms of the question, like in terms of the changing like landscape of like information consumption. I almost feel like here's something where here's like a vibe shift that I actually will credit in a way. Is that I almost feel like now from like maybe from like our positionality, you know, so maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I almost feel like the issue, like, you know, and again, maybe this has changed since 2022 when this question was asked. I
was just thinking about like has this question changed in the last 3 years?
Well, I feel like maybe because now I almost feel like everyone believes in some kind of conspiracy, and the people who like don't realize that they do is like vanishingly small, and those people have like less and less influence. And like the idea of like a true like, you know, like an elaborate like high, you know, traditional conspiracy theory, you know, like from Tucker Carlson, like, and the feds at January 6th, which, like, you know, there probably is some credence to that, like whether, you know, his impression of it is like accurate or not, like, you know, but to like, you know, Joe, like these are like, those are some of the most influential like producers of media, and like also like producers of information, and like who like where people get their information and like their understanding of the world from. And like those things are like, and they really do traffic in like a lot of these things. And like that's the thing, I almost feel like now, like since we started this podcast, I do feel like what I feel like, you know, the discourse is like, or where I feel like I am in the discourse has shifted. And like, you know, COVID was a big part of this, but it shifted from, and in a way I think Joe Rogan even described this phenomenon like himself in his like a horrible stand-up, which I saw a clip of, where he said like, once COVID happened, you know, I went in like believing in science, and I came out like not believing we went to the moon or whatever. And I almost feel like, you know, our positionality in all this has like changed from, you know, being kind of like sort of in opposition to like the sort of legacy institutions of knowledge production that like poo anything that like
the Lords we used to call
exactly
them.
And well,
we don't hear so much about the Lords.
I still would call
it
and now it's just like, who controls the discourse of what the nature of the various interlocking conspiracies are, you know? Like really, in a way, like the battlefield of the subliminal jihad has like changed.
You're right. And it's kind of exploded in a way where like in this epistemological breakdown of like truth verifying institutions, there's just the open battlefield of the info war now, where like various warlord factions are like struggling to impose some kind of like stable view perspective of reality onto this increasingly chaotic world. Where I mean, I feel like it really has like, there have been a number of like complicating things that don't map neatly onto like what maybe I would have assumed like 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Like,
like what?
Well, for one, I mean, even if it's like, I have no idea if this will play out, and I'm reasonably skeptical, but like first of all, the Democrats going full hog on like, you know, supporting Israel, and then Trump maybe like not, but
I will say like
what I'm thinking of,
but that is what came to my mind as well. Like, I don't know if how much that pertains to this, but that did come to my mind as well as something where it's like, I didn't necessarily expect that. Again, I don't know how it is going to pan out either. Like, it could just, it might not even like be anything of a ceasefire. However, like, it is a thing where it's like, oh, like, you know, this probably wouldn't have happened at all. Like, you wouldn't see people like celebrating in the streets in Gaza, like over the possibility of a ceasefire, like if Kamala had won, which is like, and I didn't necessarily expect that Trump would be, I mean, I get like, you know, there's like a political optics to it and like an opportunity to spite the Democrats. And also like, he maybe just perceives what the Democrats, I guess, failed to perceive, which is that like most Americans now believe that Israel has gone too far, you know, and needs to be stopped. Like that's what the polls say, you know, like, and so maybe he's an easy political win and like at least the appearance of a ceasefire.
Yeah.
But still, like, you know, one wouldn't necessarily. But anyway, but more,
I think, you know, another thing like I brought up earlier that I think is interesting is like so many people on the right, people that normally were on the left, like for example, Oliver Stone is an interesting example. Like Oliver Stone is a Trump supporter now. Like he's out with it. Like I just watched Nixon the other day, and you know it's like watched JFK not that long ago, and you know Oliver Stone was the great lefty dissident, but also pilloried for years as a stupid conspiracy theorist, wacky conspiracy theorist, Castro loving, Putler socializing, like just what the fuck. Like he was kind of written off by like liberal Hollywood, and now like the only place he can find like a supportive home is with like this right wing kind of MAGA crowd who have shown themselves to be somewhat flexible. It's like they'll never turn down like a liberal that walks into their camp. They will immediately absolve them of any culture war crimes and be like, actually, Oliver Stone's jail. But now it's like the discourse in a kind of new way. I mean, it always was this with like in the 2000s and 2010s. For a long time, there's been a right wing kind of a majority dominance of conspiracy theory discourse in America.
When you get deep into it, however, but
this is going more mainstream.
I know exactly what you're describing. Where like how I would put it is that like in 2015, let's say, if someone told me that they believe that 9/11 was an inside job, I would not know what that person's political alignment was necessarily. In terms
they could
of
be
left
libertarian,
versus right.
They could be a super leftist, Immortal Technique fan, right?
Or if someone here's
whatever.
an even better example.
Okay.
In when the Epstein stuff came out,
right?
Everyone was interested in that, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas today, I almost really do feel like it would be so, and it was then too. Not to say the right wing didn't jump on it, and Pizzagate was largely a right wing phenomenon in many ways, but there also was kind of a big interest in it among people who were on the political left. Maybe not Pizzagate per se, but in the Epstein stuff. Whereas now I feel like that would immediately be so heavily right wing coded that the default leftist approach to it would be to sneer at it.
Downplay it, not interested.
I think that might maybe, I mean, there is a whole contrafactual hypothetical, but
we have there have been sort of new little Epsteins that have kind of some cases that, I mean, Diddy is probably but Diddy is also see, that's the thing. I mean, Diddy was a little more, I guess, Democrat coded because of vote or die, and he was friends with all these liberal celebrities and all these kinds of things. So I think you're right, though, that there's an impulse that now, because the right wing will jump on any kind of thing like that and immediately weaponize it as part of their broader culture war narrative. And it's really kind of like a QAnon light has persisted, but it's not the real hard shit that was in the late 2010s. That has mysteriously gone away. But now it's almost the idea of the storm has been watered down a little bit and kind of mainstreamed and incorporated into Trump's whole vibe. And partially as a result of what happened with him losing and then January 6th and then alleging it was stolen and then getting his revenge. It kind of fits the QAnon eschatological narrative a little bit, but it's
it does.
Toned down. After January 6th, they toned down the kind of really but it's RFK, the COVID questioner guy is gonna be in there. Tulsi's gonna be in there. There's gonna be some kind of wacky figures, but I just noticed now, whether it's UFO shit, which everybody, the way everybody talks about UFOs now is kind of wild compared to when we started in 2020. It was already starting to bubble up a little bit, but now these right-wing military guys love fucking talking about the UAP shit and all the time, and speculate. All these Silicon Valley people keep dropping hints that they know what it is, but they can't really say.
Right.
They're all kind of interdimensional pilled. They're all Jacques Vallée.
Yes. Gin theory is something that has gone totally mainstream.
That's what I'm saying. Gin theory's gone
Tucker
mainstream.
Carlson, the most popular cable news host in the country at one point, said that he was attacked by a djinn in his bed. Well, he said a demon. He wouldn't say djinn.
We all know. We all know that it would.
And djinn are not necessarily demons. I mean, this was an evil djinn, obviously,
it was a bad djinn.
Or it was one of his 4 dogs
djinn
that apparently he sleeps in his bed with. But
but either way, they're getting, and now with the psychedelic shit too. I mean, even the psychedelic counterculture is almost bigger on the right than it is on the left.
I would say I almost feel I don't know. Again, or
the emotional investment in it as a revolutionary thing.
The left is the left as a thing is the only thing is the Palestine solidarity movement on college campuses, which are going to be really in for it under. I think maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he has some kind of other priorities or other thoughts, but based on everything that he's been signaling and like, you know, all the people who like clustered around him. I mean, a lot of them around the ceasefire, like were voicing their sense of betrayal and everything. So maybe.
Well, I think if the war keeps going, and it might, then I would definitely worry about the types of like responses he would have against like protesters, because he has a lot of people around him that are like psycho-Zionists.
Yeah, and
if the war does stop, if like the bombing and the killing and stuff like does stop, then that might be his kind of easy way out of like, I don't want to have to deal with this. Like, you know, there won't be a lot of protests because it'll be kind of quote unquote over, and he can focus on other shit. Yeah, I don't know.
That's the thing. Like, okay, so like take someone like Ian Carroll, you know. Ian Carroll may like be like, I don't know what he believes. I think he's just kind of like a grifter. Like, I don't know if he believes anything. However, like he's definitely right wing. He's definitely pro-Trump, even though he's like anti-establishment and all about like conspiracies or whatever, you know. But he's not like pro-Israel, you know. So even that is not like the province of the left. And that's like these days.
There is a faction of like MAGA that is like actually like fuck Israel. Like, you know, there is like a section of kind of more like the younger generations and like not necessarily like the advisors around Trump, but like the sort of the people that voted for Trump.
No, yeah,
and
it's
kind of like him. Some of the influencers are like,
it's true. Some of the influencers who are not necessarily like, you know, like obviously Nick Fuentes is anti-Israel because he's like
a Nazi,
like a hardcore anti-Semite.
Right.
But like you know, like he actually like hates.
But there's
Jews
degrees of
per
it.
se.
Yeah.
But then there are people who are like, you know, maybe they flirt with that a little bit, but they're a little bit more.
Or they kind of like the isolationist thing of like,
yeah,
Ron
exactly,
Paul
the
used to say,
isolationist
why
thing.
should we send them money? You know, things
yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
Yeah, there you go.
And so it's interesting. But yeah, you're right. The left. I mean,
like
I can almost think that.
And I almost feel like the people who were like at one point like held up as the new generation of leftists, either they went the AOC direction or they like became movie pilled and just talk about movies all the time. You know, like.
Well, yeah.
And that's like their real focus is trying to like scramble their way into a dying Hollywood system that will never accept them.
That is burning.
Exactly.
The blacklist never ended still.
You might as well try to get the United States to divest from Israel, because that is like, you know, perhaps even more likely than you having a Hollywood career. That's my message to those people. But
yeah,
anyway.
There'll be certain foundation-funded magazines that trudge along, but I think their moment of, you know, the new heckin' left has passed. And I mean, I was just thinking that, you know, if the Gaza conflict like does have a ceasefire that holds and the sort of protest movement in the United States dies down, that's kind of the only thing that was attracting a lot of popular like attention and energy and support that was sort of like a leftist cause. Like when you really think about it, like that would get people out in the streets, that would get young people out and like being like, fuck the US government for doing this, blah, blah, blah. If that's if that issue is settled, what is the left agitating for in, you know, the rest of the 2020s? Like, because I guess everyone just gave up on single payer health care. I guess we're not going to do that. War, I don't know. A lot of even AOC loves like funding Ukraine and like didn't really do much to stop Gaza, you know, and all that shit. And they're still NATO pilled to like any of the people that are actually in power are still, and, you know, especially with Trump in there threatening NATO. Oh no, we have to defend. They're just going to defend NATO harder because they see it as part of like the order, the good liberal democratic order that like needs to be preserved, because otherwise blah, 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 blah. So that's not going to be very helpful in terms of like
Black
combating
Lives
like
Matter
imperialism.
didn't even like that almost seems to have kind of
gone.
abated in a big way. Like there were like tons of awful killings. Like I saw videos of like an old woman being shot in her house for carrying a bucket of water, or sorry, a possibly boiling pot of water that was assessed as like a lethal threat.
As a threat.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
like,
no. Speaking of that, I know it's not a shooting of a black person, but you know, the Pizzagate shooter just got murked by police, I believe, in North Carolina. Did you read that?
No.
Edgar Madison Welch III, who was the guy who stormed into Comet Ping Pong.
Oh yeah,
and
wasn't he related to the Hawk Tua?
No, I saw that. I think that was.
Okay, that was
joking.
like a made up joke. Okay,
the last
yeah. Right. Okay,
somebody was trolling.
Yeah,
but
I'm glad that was.
But no, I always remember like that was sus because like he sort of like weirdly like shit coded like. That I'm not saying there was like a basement, but like it never was about the basement. It wasn't about the basement. It was about that guy's fucking political connections. Anyways, yeah, and he goes in and like shoots like the computer allegedly. I don't know if that was real. And then Ketanji, what's her name? Jackson Brown. Brown Jackson, who was then a federal judge, I believe was the one who like sentenced him and said like you are like a disgusting human being. I don't know. Like it was. I remember liberals like are so. There's something about Pizzagate, maybe it was a little too close to home, that they just like reveled in like crushing it and being like, this cannot be talked about. Now we're living in like Pizzagate world where everything's on the table. I mean, you know, and there's enough toppings on that pizza to make it worth paying attention to, I would say, with the Diddy shit and Weinstein, Me Too. Like, think about everything that came out after, like, people kind of just like poop. I mean, I know Pizzagate is extreme, but like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by like Pizzagate.
I know. I have my own special Pizzagate in my head of things that are legitimately suspicious, not to be confused with weird like psyop things that were also injected into it, and all the fake shit that's circulated. But anyways, I don't know.
Like hot dog equals child.
Yeah, hot dog equals child. Yeah, you know, stuff like that. But no, Edgar Madison Welch was I guess he was violating probation. He had a warrant out for violating his probation because he got out of jail for the Comet Ping Pong thing. And they like pulled him over, and then allegedly he like pulled out a gun, but they didn't say he pointed it at them. They just said he refused to put it down, and so they made the decision to just like blast him multiple times and kill him.
Wow.
So he got taken out. Yep.
Well,
which is
on that note,
weird, but anyways, so yeah, Marxist leftists. Maybe in the last 3 years. I think there's less people than there were in 2022 who have this like straight up anti-conspiracy attitude. Like you said, everyone's got their own pet conspiracy now. We're in the age of conspiracies. We're in the age of epistemological breakdown. And the trick is not to deny that that's happening, but to like try to figure out a way to cut through the psyops and not lose your mind, which I guess is what we try to do.
We try.
Yeah, we try. But yeah, I guess that's our time today. Good questions. Thank you to the Grotto for waiting patiently for reactions to that. And we'll get back to it soon. Maybe we'll do it monthly. We'll fire through more of these questions. And then I can feel comfortable saying that you should subscribe to the Hour Frequency and go on Discord and ask new questions that hopefully won't take 3 years to answer. But, you know, they're always relevant, even though they're old, sometimes even more so. So we'll get out of here. But until next time, dear listeners, stay vigilant.